waited until finally we heard that my grandparents had arrived home safely and weren't hurt. Fast forward to today, and elderly veterans who risked their lives to protect us from terrorists like those who bombed this city face spending their dying days being dragged through the courts. Why? Because Labour wants to repeal our Legacy Act. It is shameful. Let that sink in. The last generation's heroes betrayed by this generation's sellouts. It's not right. It's not justice. And conference, never on our watch. Now, we all knew that Keir Starmer would be a bad Prime Minister. But I don't think anyone anticipated he would be this bad. He's combined the management style of David Brent with the administrative grip of Blackadder's Baldric. He's proven himself to be a freebie grabbing, free speech stifling, criminal releasing, tax raising, farmer hating, Brexit betraying, aspiration sapping, sorry excuse for a leader. And conference, this is someone who makes a hole in the air look substantial. Peter Mandelson appeared trustworthy, and Mr. Bean looked like a model of competence and grip. But despite all this, and this might surprise you, I think we've got reason to be optimistic. And that's because, in ways that matter most profoundly, the fantasists masquerading as experts are seeing their myths busted. The people got it right, while they got it wrong. Wrong on mass migration, wrong on free speech, wrong on net zero, wrong on two-tier justice. Make no mistake, the old order, it's collapsing. For too long, the chattering classes drowned out the voice of the people. Our job, conference, is to make sure that the people's will prevails. But it won't be easy. It won't be easy. Because right now, the gap between the government and the governed is wider than ever before. Ladies and gentlemen, let me give you one example of that great gulf. I present to you the Attorney General, Richard Hermer. Like one of those infamous mafia lawyers of yesteryear, Hermer always chose a particular type of client. Shamima Begum, Osama bin Laden's right-hand man, terrorists involved in 7/7. Since taking office, the advice we're told Lord Hermer has given to Starmer and his cronies, like to give away the Chagos Islands to an ally of China and to pay billions of pounds for the privilege. In each and every one of these incidents, he's wasted no time establishing himself as a useful idiot for our enemies. His rise symbolizes the central truth of Keir Starmer's government. Labour is just not on Britain's side. Why on earth? Why on earth? Thank you. Why on earth would Britain's Attorney General change the law to enable our country's enemies to sue the very government that he represents? Well, it makes more sense when you realize that another of Lord Hermer's old clients was, you guessed it, Gerry Adams. Gerry Adams. Not long ago, a man with his past would have had no place in mainstream politics. Now he sits around the cabinet table and he influences the biggest decisions about our country. The same cabinet table that the IRA tried to blow up in 1991. Shame on him, and shame on the man who appointed him. Now, last week at Labour conference, Labour lined up to attack me for scrutinising judges, for mind-bogglingly absurd judgments, like the Albanian criminal who avoided deportation because his son didn't like the taste of chicken nuggets in Albania. Labour just don't get it. They don't get it. They really don't. Now, you might be wondering, what have I got in this box? Well, don't worry. I'm not about to do a Michael Fabricant tribute act. This is actually serious. For those of you at the back of the room who can't see, I have here a judge's wig. It's something we should all respect and revere. When a judge dons a wig, it signifies the transition from their everyday personality, their identity, to that of a legal arbiter. It's a visual representation of the judge's role as an unbiased mediator, focused solely, only, on upholding the law and delivering justice. An unbiased mediator. That is what a judge should be. And that is what the vast majority of judges in our legal system do. They wear the wig. They respect and revere it. And that is why, in turn, our legal system is respected and revered all around the world. But we've got a problem. Conference, we have a problem. It's one that Labour choose to ignore. Today, I've uncovered dozens of judges with links to Open Borders charities who take to social media to broadcast their Open Borders views, who spent their whole careers fighting to keep illegal migrants in this country. Some even continue to do so whilst astonishingly serving as judges. It's like finding out halfway through a football match that the ref is actually a season ticket holder for the other side. The public rightly ask, how independent are they? They dishonor generations of independent jurists who came before them, and they undermine the people's trust in the law itself. Judges who blur the line between adjudication and activism can have no place in our justice system. Which is why we won't just tinker with a broken system and reform immigration tribunals. We will abolish them, once and for all. And we won't stop there. We will restore the proper role of our judiciary, putting ultimate power back where it belongs, in the hands of Parliament and ministers, accountable to you, the people of our country. So I can announce today that we will restore the office of the Lord Chancellor to its former glory. We will reverse the constitutional vandalism of Tony Blair and New Labour. The Lord Chancellor will once again appoint the judges. No more quangos. And they will be instructed never to permit political activists of any political hue to don the wig ever again. They will also be responsible for issuing new sentencing guidelines. The two-tier sentencing council is not fit for purpose, so it must be abolished altogether. Never again will this country and our people face the prospect of two-tier justice under two-tier care. Every single person treated exactly the same. Not equity, equality. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the conservative, no, that is the British way to do justice. Now, I know you are all wondering, who's the fourth blonde that I mentioned at the beginning? The one who will point the way to how we recover the fortunes of our party. Is it Margaret Thatcher? Not this time. Is it Boris Johnson? No. Lord Heseltine. Bear with me. As you can imagine, Michael Heseltine and I do not agree on everything. But he told me that when he was a young man in opposition back in the 1970s under Margaret Thatcher, he would wake up every morning and he'd ask his wife, how am I going to fight Labour today? And at the end of the day, he would lie in bed again and he would ask his wife, well, he obviously wasn't a very romantic man. Tomorrow, how am I going to fight Labour? Now, I don't say that to my wife in bed. But I do think it. And that is what each and every one of us must do. Fight this failing Labour government. Fight for the future of our country. And when we fight, we win. Like forcing Sadiq Khan to go after those fare dodgers who blight the capital, stopping two-tier sentencing rules and guidelines, and ensuring there is equality before the law for everyone. And most importantly, led by Kemi, shaming the Labour government to ensure there is a full national inquiry into the rape gang scandal. Don't let anyone tell you that opposition is pointless. It matters. And right now, with this government, it matters more than ever. And conference, your support matters too. To the door knockers, the pavement pounders, the envelope stuffers, the tweeters, the TikTokers, the members, the councillors across the length and breadth of this country. Let me say to you, each day, in all kinds of ways, you are getting things done, far away from the wood-panelled corridors of Westminster. I say thank you. Thank you for everything that you are doing. You are making our country a better place. And please, though it may feel tough, don't ever forget what you are doing for all of us right now. Thank you. Now we all know that feeling when you've eaten too much and you simply think, enough. As those of you who've known me for a while will know, I used to feel that a lot more than I do today. But speaking to people out in the country, I think the British people are using that same word, enough. Enough of being overlooked. Enough of being treated like fools. They see it, don't they? When they watch freeloaders brazenly walk out of shops laden with goods they haven't paid for. They hear it when morons blast music in public places with utter disregard for others. And they feel it when they see the police ignore all these things, yet find time to knock on someone's door and scold them for a post on social media. Dismissed, derided, demeaned for so long. The British people are patient and they are tolerant, but only up to a point. They've had enough. Now, I've read countless stories about how talented young people are abandoning the UK. They're emigrating to Dubai or Singapore or Australia, and not just because of the weather. Conference, this is my message to you. We may be a little bit down, but our country is not out, because there is a better way. There is so much good in our country that's worth fighting for. We've got so much to cherish about who we are. Blue remembered hills seen from black country towns, big skies over the flat acres of Nottinghamshire, the best farmers, food and drink, beer in the world, from Aberdeen Angus steaks to Hawkstone lager, a love of pubs, our love of animals, the common law, jury trials, a royal family so admired that they make the most powerful man in the world go weak at the knees, a military that has defeated every force on the planet, the roar of the crowd at Twickenham as the Red Roses beat the Canadians, or Chris Wokes, arm in a sling, goes out to bat at the Oval, the quiet kindness of our hospice movement, the millions of volunteers whose helping hands and broad shoulders make our society strong, the spirit of builders, of makers, of doers, of givers. These are the reasons our hearts swell when we think of Britain. I see it, conference, and so do you. I see it when I travel around our country, even making the occasional video. I've developed a Michael Portillo-esque knowledge of Britain's motorway service stations. So if you're watching, hello to my friends at Greg's, at Peterborough North Services. You might see me later this week. But above all, as I've been visiting communities, I've asked a lot of questions. And I'm telling you, out there, the spirit is strong. I felt it when I went to Epping and stood with mums, local mums, sick of illegal migration and determined to keep their families safe. I felt it when I went out with tradesmen, gas fitters like my dad, sick of their livelihoods being wrecked when scumbags break into their vans and nick their tools and sell them in plain sight at the local car boot sale. I felt it when I talked to folk putting up flags, sick of their identity being sneered at. The collapse of the old order is in sight. A new one is coming because the British people are fighting back. And conference, there's absolutely nothing that Labour can do to stop them. The only choice we have is whether we have the spirit to fight with them. Are we going to quit when the going gets tough? No. Are we going to dig deep and fight like never before? Yes. How long will our battle last? As long as it takes. Because Britain, for all its present flaws, is too precious to lose. Let me not see our country's honour fade. Let us see our land retain her soul her pride, her freedom. Conference, every tide turns. I can feel Britain's fortunes turning. So let's pick ourselves up. Let's dust ourselves down. Let's draw on Britain's greatness to make it greater still. Let's fight for a better future. Let's build this new order. Let's take our country back. Thank you, conference. Thank you.
Impassioned speech there from Robert Jenrick. I mean, he talked about Keir Starmer's phase 2, which hasn't gone well. David Lammy, he took a pop at him, and he said under Kemi Badenoch's leadership, he will support the Jewish community, which is very positive. He talked about the Legacy Act, and then the bit that I found quite entertaining was when he said we all knew Keir Starmer would be bad, but they didn't realise he would be that bad. And then he compared his management style to David Brent, and with the wit of Baldrick. Loads to unpack there, so let's head over live to the conference. This is Good Afternoon Britain with myself and, of course, my co-presenter Tom Harwood, who's GBNews' deputy political editor, and he's there now at conference. A very powerful speech. It felt like almost a leadership bid.
I think that's the prism through which people will be viewing this speech. But it was a speech with lots of memorable moments. I don't think I can remember seeing a speech on the stage at a Conservative Party conference that involved a prop since Theresa May was handed a P45 by a comedian back in 2018. No, Robert Jenrick was really leaning into the imagery and, dare I say it, the gimmicks, perhaps, but it did drive home a point that he wanted to make, that our justice system should be impartial. He views our justice system as not being impartial. He's gone to war with the Sentencing Council. He's gone to war with certain judges that he views as being political, members of pro-migrant charities and all the rest of it. And he says he wants to take the power away from the independent institutions that Tony Blair created and give it back to the Lord Chancellor, a politically appointed role.
Wow, I thought it was a great speech. Thank you very much, Tom. We'll catch up with you in a bit. But also joining us now is GBNews political editor Christopher Hope. Christopher, wow, what a speech. What's the energy like there? How was it received?
It felt like quite an upbeat message. I think, you know, we heard this, be proud of your country from Robert Jenrick, of course, the Shadow Justice Secretary. With me now is Benedict Swan from Portsmouth North. Benedict Swan, how do you find that?
I thought it was very uplifting, very positive, and it really kind of set the tone now.
Yeah, OK. Let's go into the crowd further on. Thank you. Hello, sir. Chris Hope from GB News. How do you find that Robert Jenrick speech? He pulled out a judge's full-bottom wig.
Yes, good gimmick, excuse me my voice. Excellent speech, well-rounded, inspirational.
Yeah, but better than Kemi Badenoch?
I didn't see Kemi's before, but I'll see her tomorrow.
OK, thank you, sir. So, Chris Hope from GB News. How do you find that speech from Robert Jenrick?
I'm not going to comment.
OK. And Madam, Chris Hope from GB News. Will you comment on that speech from Robert Jenrick? How do you find it?
I thought it was really good, actually. I'm glad that we've started saying the quiet parts out loud, and it's about time, long overdue.
And he said, be proud of your country.
Yeah, as a former councillor, I've always been proud of my country, and some people within the party have looked down their nose at my style of politics, but that was my style of politics.
Thank you, Madam. Hello, sir. Chris Hope from GB News. Any comment on that speech there from Robert Jenrick? He said, be proud of your country. You can get, the tide will come in and go out again for the come in for the Tory party.
I do hope so. I think, you know, with a bit of luck, we will come back, and you know, we can be proud of the country, and we can be proud to be Conservative, and I think that was a good speech.
Is it one of a leadership material speech?
I'm very supportive of Kemi as leader. In fact, I joined the party only after she was selected as leader. That was the primary reason that I joined.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So, Chris Hope, GB News.
It was
why was it the best speech?
just so uplifting, a real positive vision of conservatism. It was wonderful.
Better than Kemi Badenoch?
Well, I don't want to say about that, but he was excellent. He was excellent.
So, Chris Hope, GB News.
Hello.
Good
Hi.
to see you. How do you find that speech?
I thought that was a very good speech by Robert, and just what we need to get this party going. You criticised us for being quiet. We weren't quiet this morning.
There's lots of callback from the audience.
Absolutely.
Madam,
thank you.
Madam, Chris Hope from GB News. How do you find that speech?
Excellent. as good or better than I expected.
Better than Kemi Badenoch on Sunday?
Yes, I thought she was good too.
Who would you,
a good pair.
Who would you prefer as leader, Kemi Badenoch or Robert Jenrick?
I don't know, they're both good. Different qualities.
Kemi. Madam, Christopher Hope, GBNews. How do you find that speech?
I found it really invigorating, uplifting and engaging, and it was really funny as well, so I didn't actually zone out at all. That, I think, is a potential future leader.
And he says the tide will turn of the Tory party.
Absolutely. I think we're all optimistic here. I think you can feel around conference we're all really optimistic.
As we speak, your councillors are defecting to Reform UK.
At the moment, as we speak, I think we're going to come back re-energised after conference and give it another go.
OK. Sir Christopher Hope, GBNews. Madam Christopher Hope, could no. I think we've run to the end of our grabbing. Yeah, that was interesting. There was a good speech by Robert Jenrick. Pulled out a full-bottom wig to show his activist judge's line. They liked it.
All right, Christopher Hope, thank you very much. So there we go. That was Robert Jenrick's speech, and that's how it was received. The lady at the end, though, she did say something interesting with regard to leadership. So it sounds like she would possibly prefer Robert Jenrick as leader. But let's get the reform perspective with the reform councillor from Medway, Robbie Lammas. Robbie, so that Robert Jenrick, very, very invigorating. He's kind of on the same track as Reform, but he's a Conservative. Do you think that perhaps the Conservatives may stop there? You know, they're all going to Reform right now. Do you think this might be enough to stop it?
I don't think it will be enough to stop it. You see, when you speak to people on the doorsteps, what's clear is that the trust has just gone with the Conservative Party. People don't want to hear the message, and as good or bad as the speech may be, when they're not being receptive, you know the game is up. What they are telling me here in Medway, where I've just defected to Reform, is that they trust Nigel Farage because he's been consistent forever on the key issues.
But Nigel Farage hasn't really got the experience that some of the others have. So, for example, Robert Jenrick has been in power. I know the Conservatives didn't do that good a job in the last few years, for sure. But do you think that at the last minute people might think, I don't know whether I can trust Reform. I'm going to just do what I normally do and vote Conservative?
Well, I'd say a few things to that. The first thing is that you can do a lot of things before you know any better. That is certainly true in government. Tony Blair, when he came in from opposition without any prior ministerial experience, certainly was effective in getting his policy agenda through. Not that I agree with it, of course. And the third thing I would say on that is that Nigel Farage has shown himself to be very much a team player. You know, getting people on board such as Zia and also Danny Kruger was huge. Certainly in my reason why I defected.
What about the fact that 2/3 apparently of Tories would say, look, they welcome a pact with Reform UK? Would that be something that Reform, or you, even yourself, would consider?
It wouldn't be me to consider anything like that. Certainly locally, people are all behind Reform. They don't see the Conservatives locally here in Kent as tough enough on the issues of the day. Reform asks the questions that need to be answered, and they're on the side of ordinary people.
But are you not concerned, because there are quite a few Tories defecting now to Reform, that it could kind of dilute Reform's message? And in the end, people might start to think, well, it's just Conservative Party 2.0.
No, I mean, the thing that's really amazed me about Reform is just how well they are at sort of checking people out, and also the questions they ask. They generally want to know that you share their values, and that's something that I find really refreshing. So I'm not worried at all.
And how do you think your party will shake the notion that Keir Starmer and some of his front bench were pressing, that your immigration policies are racist?
No, they're not racist at all. Like, in any way, it's just about being on the side of fairness. People just want fairness. They want access to these privileges that should come with citizenship to be reserved for citizenship. And by the way, it's funny, my Auntie Wei, who's from Hong Kong, who came over for lunch the other day, first thing she said to me was, I can't believe Reform. Their policy is great. I agree with it completely. But if you ask normal people, they get it. They really do get it.
I mean, look, I say the Labour Party came out with something pretty similar. Literally the next day, Shabana Mahmood came out with something that was almost identical, apart from the indefinite leave to remain, so there wasn't really much in it. So I do find the accusation of racism a bit I think that was a bit below the belt, and I actually think Keir Starmer should apologise for that, because the policies clearly weren't racist, and most people could see that. But won't Reform have exactly the same problem that the Tories and Labour have, is that when they get into government, they're still dealing with the same civil service and the same structures that are in place and the same legal framework that has literally prevented both the Tories and the Labour Party from actually actioning any of their policies?
Well, that's why Reform have committed to removing the United Kingdom from these blocking legal frameworks, such as so-called ECHR, and they've gone further and said that any kind of international treaty that gets in our way, we will push it to one side and reform it or repeal it. So they will be materially different because they understand, crucially, why there's been such a block, why there has been such paralysis. Plus also, Nigel Farage is a guy who has immense political will. I met him first in 2018 and I was amazed at how deeply he holds his beliefs. He's someone that actually follows through because he's consistent and he says what he actually believes.
Some people might say, though, that Reform are a one-man party. As you pointed out, Nigel Farage, of course, he's a very charismatic leader. But if, just say, for example, Nigel gave up the role of leader or he was not there to be leader, would Reform UK, do you think Reform UK has the legs to kind of go it alone if it had to?
Well, if you asked me a month ago, I would say probably not. But now I've actually got a little look inside of them, albeit very briefly thus far. I've been really impressed at the quality of people they have. So I would actually go as far to say that there is a legacy. But do not underestimate the importance of leadership. And that's where the key dividing line is about who do you trust to deliver on the policies they're saying? Do you trust Nigel Farage, who's been consistent for many, many decades on the key issues of today? Or you trust a party that's making a pig's ear of it now, or another one that tried for 14 years and didn't really do much?
Well, I hear you. Thank you very much. Really good to talk to you. That's Robbie Lamas. He is a Reform councillor from Medway. Thank you for your thoughts.
No worries, thanks.
Right, 31 minutes after 12 o'clock. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. According to a taxpayer-funded gallery, Lord Nelson was queer, despite his marriage and affairs with women. All of that and much more after your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. It's just after 12:30. Well, the top story this hour. We are 2 years into the anniversary of the Hamas attacks. Israel and Hamas war, though, still raging as new peace talks are beginning in Egypt. Here, though, meanwhile, in the UK, Sir Keir Starmer has called on people not to protest against Palestine action. Well, in the last few minutes, Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, has been speaking at the Conservative conference. In a major shake-up, he's pledged to scrap the Sentencing Council and end two-tiered justice. That comes as now 20 Conservative councillors have defected to Reform UK. The Tory councillors are defecting in time for the finale of the Conservative conference. Those are the headlines for now. I'll be back with you for a full roundup at 1.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Through today, we'll see spells of rain pushing into northern areas, but to the north of this, sunny spells, a chance of some showers, and elsewhere it's likely to be slightly cloudier picture compared to yesterday afternoon. Where we'll see the bulk of the rain is where we see this cold front slowly shifting its way southwards, clearing Scotland, Northern Ireland, and pushing into parts of southern Scotland, northern parts of England and Wales. The rain should be mostly light, but it could persist through much of the afternoon. To the north of this, sunny spells, a risk of a few showers around coast of Scotland, and to the south, a cloudier picture, but we will see some brighter spells, particularly across the east. Feeling warm where we do see any sunshine, highs reaching around 18 to 19 degrees Celsius. Across the south, we'll see cloudy skies persist through much of the evening. Once again, we could see some breaks in the cloud overnight. That's where we'll likely see some mist and fog develop, and potentially some drizzle around hilly areas of Wales to finish off the day. But across Northern Ireland, southern parts of Scotland, much clearer skies, so it's going to be turning chilly here as soon as that sun goes down. A chance of mist and fog once again, possibly even some isolated frost. But around Scotland, we'll eventually see more cloud pushing from the west, still a continuation of those showers and starting to turn quite breezy once again, particularly around exposed coasts of Scotland. This band of rain will continue to sink its way southwards, and that will lead us into quite a murky start across parts of Wales, central parts of England and across any southern counties. Once again, plenty of cloud leading to quite a grey and murky start. But to the north of this, bright skies as we head towards dawn, but feeling much chillier. Temperatures in rural spots likely to dip below freezing, but across the south, another fairly mild start. Now the cloud and the remnants of this rain, once again fairly light drizzle just pushing into southern counties, but could be quite persistent through the course of the day. So fairly grey skies here, but to the north of this, a return of the sunshine. Across Scotland though, once again a return of the cloud and also some drizzle, particularly across western spots. Feeling warm once again in any sunshine, highs reaching around 18 degrees.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GBNews Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. The M73 southbound at Junction 2A is closed for roadworks, so drivers should follow the signed diversion. The M48 imposes a 7.5 tonnes weight restriction for heavy goods vehicles starting May 27, 2025 until further notice. Unfortunately, in Cornwall, a vehicle fire on the A30 westbound between the junctions with the A395 and the A389 Bodmin North has resulted in all lanes being closed, expected to resolve soon. And on the trains, South Western Railway is experiencing major disruption in the Twickenham area, and Cross Country sees no trains passing through Gloucester. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GBNews Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 12:36. I'm Nana Akua. Now, the Prime Minister has marked the second anniversary of the October 7th attack in Israel with a warning that anti-Semitism is on the rise in Britain. The slaughter of 1,200 people marked the deadliest single day for the Jewish community since the Holocaust. An additional 251 people were taken hostage. The attacks triggered the war in Gaza, and 2 years later, military action is still ongoing. But, shockingly, a woman has been caught cutting down yellow ribbons for the hostages held in Gaza. Have a watch, have a listen.
I never understand these people who video people. What's your name? What's your name? Feel so proud of yourself. What's your name?
No, you're not going to do this.
Not going to do what?
I'm not committing a crime.
Yes, you are. You're doing something that is...
If I am, then call the police. You call the police and you let them know that you have an issue with this.
You disgusting little human being. You're disgusting.
Absolutely disgusting, I agree with that. Well, let's go live to Israel now and speak to journalist and author Yotam Confino. Yotam, thank you very much for joining me. Absolutely disgusting, frankly, that anyone would do that for the death of anyone anyway. So you can't have two views, that it is, you are concerned about the death of people in Palestine, in Gaza, and also be concerned with the hostages without having to sink to such levels. What's happening in Israel and how are people commemorating the day?
So the commemorations already began at 6:29 this morning to mark exactly when Hamas began its terror attack on October the 7th 2 years ago. So at 6:29, people were gathering in some of the kibbutzim where the massacre took place. People also, depending on how you're affected, some were out, in the kibbutzim with other people. Others were just mourning at home. Tonight, there'll also be a gathering at Hostage Square where there'll be speakers and, of course, relatives of hostages calling for the release of the remaining 48 hostages. So it's an extremely somber day, and most people in Israel have somehow been affected by October the 7th. And, of course, the last 2 years of war. 1,000 soldiers have been killed since October the 7th in Gaza and Lebanon and all of the wars that Israel have fought since Hamas ignited the wars.
What are your thoughts as you look across to other countries, and in particular Britain, and you see that there will be pro-Palestine protests likely today, and of course the awful events that happened in Manchester?
I'm sorry to say, but your country is falling apart. You've had hundreds of thousands of terror supporters and anti-Semites roaming the streets of London and other cities in the UK for 2 years. And the fact that this has been going on for so long, the fact that you have open terror supporters in all segments of society, from your healthcare system, from teachers. You had radical Islamists just killing people on Yom Kippur just last week. It tells you that your society is sick. But it's not just the UK, it's pretty much everywhere in the West, where you have radical Islamists, extreme left-wingers, and anti-Semites all having their joyful club where they gaslight and manipulate and tell everyone that they're so concerned about civilian lives, but they also walk around taking down posters of hostages because they don't give a damn about human rights. They care about hating Jews. This is what they're all gathering about. And it's the same people that will go out and say that this deal that's on the table promoted by Donald Trump, that that's a bad deal, and that shouldn't be accepted. If you're that radical, then you are quite literally on the wrong side of history, because every nation in the world that has had anything to do with the war has supported this, including the United Nations and Europe, Qatar, Turkey. And these people, they don't want this war to stop, because when the war stops and Hamas is removed from power, what are they going to do every day when they wake up? Which war are they going to go out and protest against? They have made this their identity. And it is so sad to see how obvious it is that they don't give a damn about human rights. They care about hating Jews.
Well, there will be people on those protests who are genuinely protesting and concerned about what is happening in Gaza. Some people would say that it's disproportionate. Yes, this is awful what happened on October the 7th, but some people might say that actually every day in Gaza is like an October the 7th with all the killing that is going on. How would you respond to that, Yutan?
First of all, let's start with what actually happened on October the 7th, because many of these people have no clue, because they haven't actually spent 5 minutes watching the endless footage of massacres being committed. We're talking about beheadings. We're talking about people going from house to house, executing, torturing, burning people alive, people going to a music festival and being slaughtered like sheep. A woman in a wheelchair and her father were cold-bloodedly murdered. You had people, babies, taken hostage into Gaza. None of it has happened in Gaza. Has there been extreme bombardments and killing of civilians? Absolutely. Has there been war crimes committed? For sure. But the crimes that Israel has committed in Gaza is not even comparable. It's a different league to what Hamas did on October the 7th. And the reason why I'm saying that is because Hamas tried their best to kill as many people as possible, and that in those hours where they were roaming free. If Israel wanted to kill as many people as possible, they could have wiped out the entire 2 million people in Gaza within half an hour, because they have the capacity to do so. But they don't. They call on civilians to evacuate before they actually conduct airstrikes. They give up the element of surprise, which is one of the most crucial things you have when you're engaged in a war. So any person who's comparing the two and trying to say, well, Israel and Hamas are equally bad, is either a moron or simply just gaslighting. And you're right, there are people who go to these protests who actually do care about the Palestinians. I'm not talking about them. But if you engage in protests where Hamas support is so open that you see people walking around with Hamas flags, maybe you should think twice about which kind of movement you're part of. I know that I would.
Mm-hmm. Some people might also say that, OK, although the method of killing is different, that again, that it's disproportionate. And it's that thing, I think, that people... I know there are people in Israel who also feel that perhaps it's disproportionate at this point. I don't know how I feel about it at all. I just think October the 7th was totally wrong, it was disgusting, and Hamas need to return the hostages. That's what I see. But what would your response be to the disproportionate nature of it?
It's such an interesting thing, the disproportionate nature of this. I think it was Douglas Murray that put it very, very eloquently. He said, what should Israel have done? Should have done exactly what Hamas did to be proportionate. Should have gone in and killed 1,200 people, mass raped people. Should they have beheaded people and then taken 250 Palestinians captives? I don't understand when people are talking about proportions, because if you look at the numbers, and now I'm trying to really, really dumb it down. Hamas says that, let's say, 66,000 people have been killed. They don't distinguish between combatants and civilians for obvious reasons, because Hamas is fighting in civilian clothes. So it's a great way for them to blur the lines. But let's say 66,000 people have been killed, and we trust those numbers coming from a vile terror group. Then you must trust or at least take into consideration the Israeli estimate of how many terrorists have been killed. We're talking more than 22,000 combatants, which means that the civilian to combatant ratio is pretty low. And it might sound cynical, but we need to look at this in military terms, because otherwise everything loses its meaning. Hundreds of thousands of civilians were killed in Iraq and Afghanistan. You haven't had nearly the same number of people killed in Gaza, yet the outrage over Gaza is tenfold of that happened during Iraq and Afghanistan.
All right, Yotam, really good to talk to you. Thank you so much for your views. That's Yotam Confino. He's a journalist and author. He's live in Israel. Our thoughts are with you on this day. Thank you very much, Yotam. Right, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. There's still to come. According to a taxpayer-funded gallery, Lord Nelson was queer, despite his marriage and affairs with women. We'll stay tuned for that one, but now if you're on search for some holiday sun, here's the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries, all sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Looking ahead to tomorrow across southern parts of Europe, there's a lot of fine weather around. A few spots of rain here and there, a couple of showers starting to push their way into parts of Portugal, maybe around some coastal parts of Spain. Otherwise, a generally fine picture here. Also generally dry across much of Italy as well. Further east into parts of Greece, also around Croatia, a few showery bursts, but a lot of that clearing away. So actually, as we go through the end of the week into the weekend, it's looking dry for many of us and warm in the sunshine.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community.
So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 10 to 1. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. Now, a prestigious gallery has suggested that Admiral Lord Nelson was queer. I mean, I don't really care either way. But curators at the Walker Gallery in Liverpool have placed Nelson in the queer relationships section. Why? Because, according to contested accounts, Nelson's last words were, "Kiss me Hardy," referring to Vice Admiral Sir Thomas Hardy. Really? However, Nelson did have numerous relationships with women throughout his life, especially with his mistress, Emma Hamilton. Let's get the thoughts of historian Martin Whittock. Martin, now, this is like one of those little stories, but I couldn't care less whether he was queer or not. I don't really see the real significance of what difference it makes, but it makes an interesting story, so tell me more.
Well, basically, I think the problem with a story like this is it actually undermines legitimate studies on the role of LGBTQ plus people within history. Famous story, people will know Nelson from Nelson's column in Trafalgar Square, because in 1805 he won this tremendous naval victory off Cape Trafalgar against the French and Spanish fleet. During the battle, a sniper from one of the nearby ships, a French sniper, shot him, recognised him obviously from the medals on his uniform. The shot pierced his spine. He was taken below decks, fatally wounded, mortally wounded, and he died. And so, although there are some variations on what he might have said before he died, there's one possibility: "Thanks be to God, well, I've lived this day, now I die content." The much more famous one is, as you rightly said, most people have heard of, was to Flag Captain Vice Admiral Sir Thomas Hardy, and he said, "Kiss me, Hardy." According to tradition, Hardy then kissed him on the hand, forehead, and Nelson died. But to use that as the basis for talking about Nelson's sexuality is completely spurious, because whatever Nelson's sexuality was, it clearly wasn't revealed in that statement. And as a matter of interest, he seems to have been energetically heterosexual as a matter of interest. He had a passionate love affair. So this was an extramarital affair with Lady Hamilton, with whom he had a daughter, Horatia. He'd been married for 18 years to Frances Nesbit. And basically, if we're going to speculate anything about Nelson's sexuality, and of course, none of this is of any relevance to him as a naval hero anyway, incredible naval hero, but if you're going to speculate anyway, we're going to talk about him being, well, fairly energetically heterosexual. And I think this kind of thing is a kind of a virtue signalling that actually undermines legitimate studies, as I say before, on the role of LGBTQ plus people, often invisible within history. And I think classifying Daniel Maclise's portrait of the death of Nelson on the website of the Walker Art Gallery under the LGBTQ plus classification really is a big step too far. England expects this day rather more from its art galleries, to paraphrase what Nelson said before Trafalgar.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? I'm with you on that. It just seems like a bit of a storm in a teacup, but a totally irrelevant one because nobody cares. Doesn't make any difference to how he fought on the battlefield. And I suspect if someone is dying, they might want that human touch, if those words are true anyway. And you know what Chinese whispers are like, so it may be just total rubbish. Martin Whittock, thank you so much. Really good to talk to you. He is a historian, and that's his take on the story. Yeah, I kind of agree with him. Listen, lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts at gbnews.com/yours. This one from Megan, and we're talking about what happened with, how people are outraged over everything. And lots of you have been saying interesting stuff about reform as well. In particular, that somebody here says that a lot of reform supporters on here usually get annoyed with them. And the fact that lots of Britain has been infiltrated. A lot of people are saying that. All right, gbnews.com/your say. Keep them coming. This is Good Afternoon Britain, live on GB News. I'm Nana Akua. Remember, you can follow us on all the social media outlets, and don't forget to download the GB News app. Lots more coming up on today's show, so do not go anywhere.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Through today, we'll see spells of rain pushing into northern areas, but to the north of this, sunny spells, a chance of some showers, and elsewhere it's likely to be a slightly cloudier picture compared to yesterday afternoon. Where we'll see the bulk of the rain is where we see this cold front slowly shifting its way southwards, clearing Scotland, Northern Ireland, and pushing into parts of southern Scotland, northern parts of England and Wales. The rain should be mostly light, but it could persist through much of the afternoon. To the north of this, sunny spells, a risk of a few showers around coast of Scotland, and to the south, a cloudier picture, but we will see some brighter spells, particularly across the east. Feeling warm where we do see any sunshine, highs reaching around 18 to 19 degrees Celsius. Across the south, we'll see cloudy skies persist through much of the evening. Once again, we could see some breaks in the cloud overnight. That's where we'll likely see some mist and fog develop, and potentially some drizzle around hilly areas of Wales to finish off the day. But across Northern Ireland, southern parts of Scotland, much clearer skies. So it's going to be turning chilly here as soon as that sun goes down. A chance of mist and fog once again, possibly even some isolated frost. But around Scotland, we'll eventually see more cloud pushing from the west. Still a continuation of those showers and starting to turn quite breezy once again, particularly around exposed coasts of Scotland. This band of rain will continue to sink its way southwards, and that will lead us into quite a murky start across parts of Wales, central parts of England, and across any southern counties. Once again, plenty of cloud, leading to quite a grey and murky start. But to the north of this, bright skies as we head towards dawn, but feeling much chillier. Temperatures in rural spots likely to dip below freezing, but across the south, another fairly mild start. Now, the cloud and the remnants of this rain, once again fairly light drizzle just pushing into southern counties, but could be quite persistent through the course of the day. So fairly grey skies here, but to the north of this, a return of the sunshine. Across Scotland, though, once again a return of the cloud and also some drizzle, particularly across western spots. Feeling warm once again in any sunshine, highs reaching around 18 degrees.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
You could bank an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. And if that wasn't enough, you'll also get to drive away in this brand new motorhome. This brand new 2025 Benamar Primero could be yours. It comes with all the mod cons you'd expect from a vehicle worth over £74,000 and comfortably sleeps 4 people. This prize package is worth over £104,000. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
2 guests we're very happy to see all the time. Patrick Christie's and Emily Carver, husband and wife, and their new little product, little baby George. Peter Alexander.
Close enough. Close enough. We won't quibble about the order. Yeah, this is baby George.
Congratulations, the two of you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. And what sort of birth was it, Emily?
The traditional way. Although
was it easy?
I was induced a little bit early because they were worried that maybe he was measuring a little small, so they wanted to get him out, which did mean that it was very, very painful indeed. But I did finally get an epidural towards the end.
How much did he weigh? Sorry, I was going to say.
6.5 pounds. Yeah, so a little one.
Honestly, I was in awe of Emily. She basically did all of it on 2 paracetamol until right at the end. Yeah. It's incredible.
Yeah, but that wasn't because I wanted to. That's because the epidural took a while to arrive.
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, to watch and just to be there, really. I felt very sorry for you, obviously, but, you know, it was...
But the staff were amazing. I had 3 midwives all sort of cheering me on. Push, push, push.
Oh.
And you? And, of course, him.
I was just,
and my mother.
I was supervising.
You were supervising.
I was supervising.
So how have you two taken to being parents? I mean, there you were leading this life, you know, and then little George comes along. Have you taken to it easily, or have you surprised yourselves, or...?
I think we've been quite natural with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's still...
I mean, as natural as you can be. I mean, not to toot our own horns, but I think it's going pretty well.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is fast approaching 1 o'clock on GB News, Britain's news channel. I'm Nana Akua, and of course I'll be joined throughout the show with Tom Harwood, my co-presenter. He's live at the Conservative Party conference in Manchester. Now, the Conservative Party loses a slew of councillors to Reform UK, with more than 20 defectors so far only today. All the while, Robert Jenrick produced a judge's wig from a briefcase to hold up as a prop during part of his speech, saying that he will sack judges with pro-migrant bias. Have a listen.
An unbiased mediator. That is what a judge should be. Today, I've uncovered dozens of judges with links to open borders charities.
It's left many asking if it's not now too late for the Conservatives to save themselves.
Well, plenty of Conservative Party rank-and-file members here at the conference have a lot of pleasant things to say about Robert Jenrick. But while the tussle at the top of the party rages on, the question is the country listening?
The Prime Minister calls anyone who attends pro-Palestine marches on the 2nd anniversary of October the 7th un-British. We'll be keeping you up to date with that throughout the show. GB News has exclusive access to the frontline officers leading the fight back against London's phone theft epidemic. As the NHS continues to struggle, first-year doctors threaten fresh strike action because they claim they can't get enough work. So interesting. Of all the things to strike for, you're not getting enough work, so we're going to go on strike. That doesn't really make sense to me at all. But what do you think? Do you think doctors, their mindset seems to have shifted away from their Hippocratic Oath, which says that they'll do no harm, to something totally different? I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments. And how difficult is it to get appointments and even see a doctor? gbnews.com/you'll say. And perhaps the government need to investigate why junior doctors cannot get enough work, seeing as we have a shortage of doctors. Something just doesn't add up. We'll stay with this. But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Nana, thank you very much, and good afternoon to you. The top story this lunchtime. It is today 2 years since Hamas militants stormed into southern Israel, killing 1,200 people and taking 251 hostages. Israelis are gathering across the country to mark the anniversary. At the site of the Nova Festival massacre, flowers, candles and tributes now line the memorial. Families of those still missing say they'll keep fighting until every hostage is returned. Meanwhile, Israel's military campaign in Gaza continues. Now more than 67,000 people have reportedly been killed, with most homes damaged or destroyed. That comes as indirect peace talks between Israel and Hamas have resumed in Egypt as hopes rise for a breakthrough in the war in Gaza. Egypt's foreign minister says the talks are centred on creating a security plan for Israel's full withdrawal. Negotiators are also seeking to guarantee unrestricted aid access into the territory. Cairo says the ultimate goal is to unite the West Bank and Gaza, a move closer to a lasting two-state solution. Here, meanwhile, pro-Palestine protesters are set to defy the Prime Minister's call not to demonstrate on the anniversary today of the October the 7th attacks. University students from King's College, UCL, LSE and Roehampton are expected to walk out of classes this afternoon in London. It comes after Sir Keir Starmer branded the planned protests un-British and urged students to show some humanity. Writing in The Times, he added the UK remains committed to peace with a safe and secure Israel alongside a viable Palestinian state. Well, turning to news from Manchester this hour, and Robert Jenrick has caused a stir at the Tory party conference there, arriving on stage with a black box and then revealing what was inside. A judge's wig. The Shadow Justice Secretary used the prop to call for a crackdown on what he calls activist judges, saying those linked to open border charities are like referees who support the opposition. The Shadow Justice Secretary also launched this blistering attack on Sir Keir Starmer.
We all knew that Keir Starmer would be a bad Prime Minister. But I don't think anyone anticipated he would be this bad. A freebie-grabbing, free speech stifling, criminal releasing, tax raising, farmer hating, Brexit betraying, aspiration sapping, sorry excuse for a leader.
Well, earlier at the same party conference, the hall was barely a third full for the Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp for his speech. Opening with a joke about hangovers, he admitted past Tory governments made a mistake on immigration and said legal migration had been too high for too long. But under new leadership, he says things will change. He also defended tougher border control, insisting it's not racist to want security or social cohesion.
For many years now, legal migration has been far too high. High under successive governments, including the last one. It was a mistake. It should never have been allowed to happen. And under new leadership, we pledge it will never happen again.
Police say they have busted an international gang accused of smuggling up to 40,000 stolen phones from the UK being sent to China. In the Met's biggest ever crackdown on mobile theft, 18 suspects have been arrested and more than 2,000 stolen devices seized. The operation began when a victim tracked their iPhone to a Heathrow warehouse, sparking raids on 28 properties across London and Hertfordshire. Officers believe the gang exported up to half of all phones stolen in London, with devices sold abroad for up to £4,000 each. And first-year doctors in England have voted overwhelmingly to strike over jobs and pay. The British Medical Association says 97% backed action amid fears of unemployment when current contracts end next summer. More than half of second-year doctors said they have no guaranteed work from August next year. Talks with the government are continuing, but the union says both pay and job security must be fixed to avoid any future walkouts. Those are the headlines for now. I'll be back with you shortly. Now, though, it's over to Nana.
Good afternoon, Britain. The Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick has unleashed a scathing attack on Labour, calling the Prime Minister a sorry excuse for a leader. Now, that was just part of his conference speech, where he also vowed to rip up sentencing rules and take the power from so-called activist judges.
An unbiased mediator. That is what a judge should be. Today, I've uncovered dozens of judges with links to open borders charities.
Yeah, sounds good, but the thing is, when they were in power, not much happened. But with 20 councillors also defecting from the Tories to reform, and that is just today alone, is the party beyond saving? Let's cross live now to the party conference, where our political editor Christopher Hope is. Christopher, tell us more.
Well, you heard that from Robert Jenrick, brandishing a judge's full-bottomed wig. Interesting political attack there, I think, on the government, saying that basically, by separating out the Lord Chancellor who appoints judges, you may have more neutral judges, according to Robert Jenrick. He's found dozens of judges with links to pressure groups and the like, and that's why he's saying, let's have a more of a fairer choosing of judges. But I was struck by the fact he said, the tie goes out, the tie goes in. That's the nature of politics. But you're joining me now at Blackwell's bookshop. Now, this is an indication of the kind of books on sale here. Margaret Thatcher books, Winston Churchill books. This is a party which is weighed down, I think, by its history. It praises Margaret Thatcher. Her clothes are over there in some cabinets here at the conference. And here is a book called Jimson's Heroes by Andrew Jimson, the author. And he joins me now, Brief Lives from Boudicca to Churchill. Andrew Jimson, you, of course, are the contributing editor to Con Home and also an author. Is this party too obsessed by the past, and does that weigh it down? And is it hard to escape from the shadow of people like Churchill?
No, it should be more interested in the past. Conservatives draw inspiration from the great figures of the past, not only Churchill but Disraeli. Disraeli is rather obscure, but he's in this book. And Disraeli began life as a rebel. Churchill had long periods of his life as a rebel, but these people became, in the end, the people who inspired conservatives and who told them what conservatism was for.
So a political hero is a rebel, really. That's how you define it in your book.
They start by being rebels. They end up by being establishment figures, and there's, of course, there are statues of them in Trafalgar Square, in Trafalgar Square and Parliament Square. Churchill looking across the road there, famous statue. And when people who are anti-Churchill want to protest, they daub.
Yes.
Rude things on that statue. So
Churchill might approve of that because he's a rebel too. I mean, not being daubed on, but
yes, he would say that they're very ignorant. These people. They call him a racist. Actually, he was an imperialist.
Yeah.
And many people were during his lifetime. And we were fighting for the British Empire during the Second World War. So it's completely unhistorical to regard him as a racist, I think.
Who are today's political heroes? I mean, is Nigel Farage one? He took on an unpopular idea called Brexit and won, and he's definitely a rebel.
All my heroes are dead. And they include people like Nelson and Boudicca, and indeed Nelson Mandela. I think it's difficult to tell while someone's still alive, because things can still go wrong, and often people are considered. I mean, to take a sort of notorious foreign example, Hitler was a hero to some of his compatriots for a time. Of course, he's the greatest villain.
Just to move into in the modern day, if I can, finally, Kemi Badenoch or Robert Jenrick, are they heroes yet?
Not yet, but they're both showing courage, and courage is the mark of is absolutely indispensable quality for a hero.
Thank you. Andrew Jimson, thank you for joining us. There you have it, Nana. The definition of what is a political hero, which one of them, will it be Kemi Badenoch or Robert Jenrick? We talked to Kemi Badenoch already for GB News. That interview airs with me at 5 p.m, and you've heard earlier from Robert Jenrick too.
Thank you very much. We'll come back to you later on. Let's now go live to the conference again and speak to GB News' Deputy Political Editor and co-presenter Tom Harwood, who is joined by Conservative MP Joe Robertson. Tom.
Yes, that's right, Nana. I'm here with Joe Robertson, Isle of Wight's East MP. Joe, this conference feels very different to previous Conservative conferences. Is this a party that knows its own soul?
It's a party that's in opposition. So we have been in government for 14 years, so we've become used to conferences where we are making decisions in government. We're now in opposition. What you've seen this conference so far is some interesting policy announcements. So what Kemi Badenoch has done is set out what a future Conservative government would look like. And I think we're turning a corner. I think we're beginning to look enthusiastic about what a future Britain could look like under a Conservative government. Because if we can't look enthusiastic about ourselves, then how do we expect voters to? And I think you're seeing a bit of enthusiasm wrapped around some policy announcements this week.
Certainly had a bit of an enthusiastic speech from Robert Jenrick some moments ago, holding up a prop on the stage at Conservative Party conference for the first time since I think Theresa May held up that P45, although that was not voluntary. I suppose I wonder, is it those sort of gimmicks, those sort of images that are going to cut through, or is it the hard yards of policy work, the 200-page legal reports on the ECHR? You've got this duality at this party conference. Which matters more?
We've got both. You need both. So yes, you've got the eye-catching moments for media. So Rob holding up that wig, I think, will probably be shown over the next 24 hours multiple times. But it's backed by the detailed work that's gone into our policy announcements. So take the Borders plan. Lord Wolfson, a preeminent lawyer, has developed a plan over a number of months, as you say, running to hundreds of pages. So our policy announcements themselves are not gimmicks. They're backed by the hard graft that we've been putting in over recent months.
Obviously the classic attack that anyone and everyone will be asking you whenever there's a new policy coming forward, whether it's out of the ECHR, repealing the Human Rights Act, whether it's the changes to business rates, whether it's anything that's been announced over the course of the last few days, is why didn't you do it when you were in power?
So the world is changing all the time. The new government, Labour government's come in. We've already seen some terrible decisions made that in the job of opposition, some of them we've been successful on reversing by putting pressure on government, like winter fuel payments. What we're looking at now is a Britain in 2028 or 2029. That's when the next general election will be. The Prime Minister's incredibly unpopular. He's not going to hold an election before then. And we're setting out an optimistic vision for the future into the 2030s. And that's what this conference has been about. Not looking back, but looking forward. And I want to see some energy and some optimism, and that's exactly what we've seen.
Is this a united party?
It is a united party, and I think what you've seen this week is that united front. There hasn't been the division of perhaps previous conferences when we were in power. Actually, we're pulling together. We're all behind the leader, and every single Shadow Secretary of State has presented their vision for a future department on the main stage. And I was there yesterday with the Shadow Culture, Media and Sports team, and we were very pleased to be able to announce, following Mel Stride's speech, a business rates cuts for the hospitality, tourism and leisure industry.
Now, of course, we're having this conversation in amongst sort of the surroundings of political anoraks. People that live and breathe politics and will pay attention to this sort of stuff all the time. Out there in the real world today, 20 Conservative councillors have just defected to the Reform Party. Are we sitting in a bubble here in Manchester when, in the real world, beyond the secure zone of this party conference, there's something different happening in the country?
So it's always disappointing when colleagues in local government choose to cross the floor or join another party, but frankly it does happen all the time. You know, my own council on the Isle of Wight, we had a Conservative councillor who became an independent the other day. You know, that doesn't get reported. It happens all the time at local government. I mean,
20
maybe it was
in a day
something
is a pretty significant move.
May well have been something Reform had up their sleeve. I want to look to the future for our party. If we can set out that optimistic vision, if we can look enthusiastic about a future Britain under a Conservative government, then voters will start to think about that future too.
Just finally, big elections in May. In your part of the world, in the Isle of Wight and the new Metro Mayor in that area, but also in Scotland, in Wales, across the country, there are going to be so many people going to vote. What would a good result look like for the Conservative Party? Third place?
It depends on your area, doesn't it? I mean, there are some areas in the country will go forward, there are some areas I'm sure will go backwards. That's the same for all parties. I think where we're in now in the political landscape is very fragmented across the country. So you will find some unexpected results. We found that at the general election, though. I mean, look in my patch, the Isle of Wight, you know, we now have me, I'm a Conservative MP on one side, we have a Labour MP on the other, and we have to work together locally. So I think we're going to find a very fragmented picture with local government elections and Scotland and Wales next year.
OK, Joe Robertson, thanks indeed for joining us here from the GBNews booth at the Conservative Party conference. But for now, back to you, Nala.
Thank you very much, Tom. That's Tom Harwood there at the Conservative Party conference with Joe Robertson MP. Right, there is still plenty of time to get our biggest Great British giveaway ever. Your chance to win goodies worth over £104,000. Here are the details.
You're not going to want to miss our greatest Great British giveaway so far. You could bank an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. And if that wasn't enough, you'll also get to drive away in this brand new motorhome. With thanks to Marquis Leisure, this brand new 2025 Benamar Primero could be yours. It comes with all the mod cons you'd expect from a vehicle worth over £74,000 and comfortably sleeps 4 people. This prize package is worth over £104,000. And remember, if you can dream it, you can drive it away. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. The winner will be contacted live on GB News, week commencing 10th November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. This is Good Afternoon Britain. Lots more coming up on today's show. Today marks 2 years since Hamas launched their devastating terror attack on Israel, which resulted in over 1,200 people being killed and more than 250 people were kidnapped. We'll be bringing you the reaction after the break. All of that and more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world, but look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, though. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel. Good afternoon, Britain. 22 minutes after 1 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. Now, the Prime Minister has marked the second anniversary of the October 7th attacks in Israel with a warning that anti-Semitism is on the rise in Britain. The slaughter of 1,200 people marked the deadliest single day for the Jewish community since the Holocaust. An additional 251 people were taken hostage, but shockingly, a woman has been caught cutting down yellow ribbons for the hostages held in Gaza. Let's have a quick listen.
I never understand these people who video people. What's your name? What's your name? If you're so proud of yourself, what's your name?
Oh, you're not going to do this.
Not going to do what?
I'm not committing a crime.
Yes, you are. You're doing something that is...
If I am, then call the police. You call the police and you let them know that you have an issue with this.
You disgusting little human being. You're disgusting.
Yes, completely disgusting. Right, let's speak to author and expert in international conflict and law, Marco Longobardo. Marco, so first of all, your thoughts on the image of a woman cutting down ribbons for hostages?
Which thoughts can I have? It's a very mean behavior, and the ribbons express solidarity towards people who have been illegally kidnapped, and I see no sense of humanity in cutting the ribbons.
Yeah, I'm with you totally on that. It doesn't seem to make any sense at all. So now you're seeing this situation unfolding. Donald Trump has come up with a peace solution, a 20-part plan. Do you think, in your view, that there's a likelihood that that will actually come to fruition and that there will be peace?
I can say that from the standing point of international law, that is my discipline, the Trump's proposal is seriously concerning. It's a proposal that has been agreed by President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu with no Palestinian involvement. This makes it problematic as a matter of the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination. And this can also be, in the future, a political issue in the sense that I don't know how long the plan will be effective if Palestinians are not part of the peace process. In any case, the good points of the plans are the return of the hostages, the ceasefire, and the gradual withdrawal of Israeli troops from the Gaza Strip. So if I look at these points, I think they are quite important goals to obtain to put an end to the atrocities in the Gaza Strip.
Just because... On the other hand, sorry, go on, carry on, please, sorry. On the other hand, the negative aspects are the fact that the administration of the Gaza Strip will be under an international control that has no legitimacy with the United Nations, there's no legitimacy aboard with Donald Trump and Tony Blair. It reminds us of the colonial period when some ethnicities were considered by the Europeans to be unable to self-govern themselves. This looks like the case of this board for the Palestinians. And this is an issue of serious concern. And then the other issue of serious concern is that there is not very clear the time schedule of the withdrawal of the Israeli troops. And there is the risk that the plan is not implemented in its entirety, and this would result in a collapse of the plan if accepted, and even more violence in the Gaza Strip. But the fact that just because the Palestinians may not have been fully involved in it, some people can write something that is good for you even if you're not involved, and then if you have a chance to critique and add your bit in, which is I think what's happening now, then you can. But Gaza wasn't run very well at all, so leaving it to the hands of the same people who ran it initially probably wouldn't really amount to much. It'll end up back where it was. So how would Hamas, who are obviously a terrorist organisation, or they are recognised as that in this country and around the world, how would it be that they would be involved in this then?
It's not a question of involving Hamas as a group. It's a question of involving Palestinians. Palestinians are entitled to self-determination. This is not a controversial issue in international law. The International Court of Justice, the principal judicial organ of the United Nations, recognized the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination.
So who would be negotiating on their behalf then? Who would you put forward then to be in these peace talks from the Palestinian side?
At the international level, Palestine is represented by the government of Ramallah, by the National Palestinian Authority, Abu Mazen. And it's very, very despicable the fact that President Trump prevented the President Abu Mazen from joining the UN General Assembly in New York, because that would have been the place where peace negotiations should have occurred. And instead, Trump tried to curry favor with other Arab states, but they do not control the Palestinians. The Palestinians don't want to be controlled by the Jordans, by the Egyptians, by the Turkish. They want to have their own government. So for sure, Hamas is responsible for atrocities, in particular 2 years ago. We know that attack was criminal. But we should not conflate Hamas with the entire Palestinian people.
All right. No, I hear you, but bear in mind, though, that Gaza was where the Palestinians had as land, and what happened to it and the way they looked after it was very bad. Marco Lombardo, thank you very much. We will talk again. He's an expert in international conflict and law. Now, the Reform UK leader has been in court today giving evidence in the trial of the asylum seeker Fayez Khan, who has been accused of making threats against Mr Farage on TikTok. Let's get more on this with GBNews' national reporter, Will Godley. Will.
Yeah, Nana, Fayez Khan is facing the charge of making a threat to kill the leader of Reform UK. That trial beginning here today, and Nigel Farage was in court giving evidence. Against that charge, Fayez Khan previously pleaded not guilty at Westminster Magistrates Court earlier this year, and he was remanded in custody. So arriving at court today, he was in those grey prison tracksuits, grey trainers, and also visible to the jury were those tattoos, very distinctive tattoos on his face, including an AK-47 on his cheek and other tattoos on his neck, his face and his cheeks as well. He only spoke to confirm his name, and he was using an Afghan translator to hear what was happening in court, where the prosecution and how Nigel Farage first included Fayez Khan, known on TikTok as Madda Passa, including his videos in a YouTube video in October last year. That was on the 12th of October, where Nigel Farage included a number of these TikTok videos from the Madda Passa account, where they were documenting his journey from Stockholm in Sweden, where he was living, to the UK, and he was due to come to the UK on a small boat, and Nigel Farage that journey on YouTube. And after Madda Passa, Fayez Khan made aware that Nigel Farage was including his videos. That was when Madda Passa uploaded a TikTok where the prosecution alleges he made a threat to kill. In court today, the jury was shown that TikTok posted on the 15th of October, in which Khan said, "Englishman Nigel, you do not know me, don't talk about me. I come to England because I want to marry your sister. I want to come to England to go pop, pop, pop." And when he was saying pop, 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 he was seen to be making what the prosecution say were gun signals with his hands, and he also was seen to bash his head to the screen as well. And the prosecution say that is a clear threat to kill. And Nigel Farage, speaking in court, when asked by the prosecution what he understood of that video, he said he understood that Mr. Khan was coming to England and he was going to shoot me. He said, Nigel Farage said he found the video pretty chilling, said given his proximity to guns, he was genuinely worried, Nigel Farage said, and referring to those proximity to guns was an earlier TikTok Nigel Farage showed in his October 12th YouTube video where a pistol was seen in one of the TikToks as well. Nigel Farage was cross-examined by the defence as well, where they challenged him on those references, whether he thought it was serious, that he was actually coming to the UK to marry Nigel Farage's sister. Nigel Farage said it was perfectly clear that this was a deeply misogynistic individual, and when asked whether he thought it was a joke, Mr Farage said absolutely not. Well, the prosecution also outlined in their arguments how Mr Khan, when he was arrested, the police found a video on his phone of GBNews, the GBNews presenter, talking about Nigel Farage's video back in October, including these Madda Pasa TikToks, where he had included text on this GBNews video where he said, "I mean what I say," when the presenter was talking about these alleged threats to kill. Well, this trial continues, and it will continue this afternoon. It's due to last 4 more days. Nana.
Thank you very much, Will. Really good to talk to you. I wonder if we're paying for his legal aid. Well, as today marks 2 years since the October 7th attacks in Israel, I'm asking, is October the 7th protest un-British? You can send us your thoughts, scan the QR code on your screen now to vote. What do you think? gbnews.com/your say, also on our website. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. GB News has exclusive access to the frontline officers leading the fight back against London's phone theft epidemic. We'll bring you more on that after your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. Just after 1:30, the top story this lunchtime. It is now 2 years since the Hamas attacks on Israel, which left 1,200 dead and 251 taken hostage. Israel's military campaign, though, in Gaza continues. More than 67,000 have been killed so far, with most homes damaged or destroyed. Here in the UK, Sir Keir Starmer has urged students not to join pro-Palestinian protests on today's anniversary, calling them un-British and a despicable excuse to attack British Jews. Robert Jenrick has made headlines at the Tory conference today, pulling a judge's wig from a black box on stage. The Shadow Justice Secretary has said it's time to stop activist judges and restore the Lord Chancellor's power to appoint them, promising to put trust back in the law. That comes as 20 Conservative councillors have defected from Reform UK, a major boost for Nigel Farage's party, ahead of the finale of the Tory conference in Manchester. Kemi Badenoch says the Conservatives are shedding a lot of baggage. And elsewhere, the Met Police say they have smashed a major phone theft gang in the UK's largest ever crackdown. Officers recovered 40,000 stolen handsets being shipped to China. Those are the headlines. I'll be back with you at 2.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
Good afternoon, Britain. This is GB News. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio. Junior doctors are set to strike because they say they're not getting enough work. Interesting reason to do that. We'll bring you all of that after the break.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Through today, we'll see spells of rain pushing into northern areas, but to the north of this, sunny spells, a chance of some showers, and elsewhere it's likely to be slightly cloudier picture compared to yesterday afternoon. Well, we'll see the bulk of the rain as well. We see this cold front slowly shifting its way southwards, clearing Scotland, Northern Ireland, and pushing into parts of southern Scotland, northern parts of England and Wales. The rain should be mostly light, but it could persist through much of the afternoon. To the north of this, sunny spells, a risk of a few showers around coasts of Scotland, and to the south a cloudier picture, but we will see some brighter spells, particularly across the east. Feeling warm where we do see any sunshine, highs reaching around 18 to 19 degrees Celsius. Across the south, we'll see cloudy skies persist through much of the evening. Once again, we could see some breaks in the cloud overnight. That's where we'll likely see some mist and fog develop, and potentially some drizzle around hilly areas of Wales to finish off the day. But across Northern Ireland, southern parts of Scotland, much clearer skies, so it's going to be turning chilly here as soon as that sun goes down. A chance of mist and fog once again, possibly even some isolated frost. But around Scotland, we'll eventually see more cloud pushing from the west, still a continuation of those showers, and starting to turn quite breezy once again, particularly around exposed coasts of Scotland. This band of rain will continue to sink its way southwards, and that will lead us into quite a murky start across parts of Wales, central parts of England, and across any southern counties. Once again, plenty of cloud leading to quite a grey and murky start. But to the north of this, bright skies as we head towards dawn, but feeling much chillier. Temperatures in rural spots likely to dip below freezing, but across the south, another fairly mild start. Now the cloud and the remnants of this rain, once again fairly light drizzle just pushing into southern counties, but could be quite persistent through the course of the day. So fairly grey skies here, but to the north of this, a return of the sunshine. Across Scotland though, once again a return of the cloud and also some drizzle, particularly across western spots. Feeling warm once again in any sunshine, highs reaching around 18 degrees.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Expect disruptions on the M73 southbound at Junction 2A, closed for essential roadworks, with diversion routes in place. On the M48, a 7.5-tonne weight restriction affects heavy goods vehicles until further notice. In Stockton-on-Tees, the A19 northbound between the A1027 and the A689 has a traffic collision, closing one of 3 lanes. In Lancashire, the M6 northbound between junctions 33 and 34 faces lane closures due to animals on the road. On the trains, South Western Railway reports major disruption in the Twickenham area. Cross-country services are not running through Gloucester. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. 39 minutes after 1 o'clock. Now, first-year doctors are preparing to go on strike over what they say is a shortage of jobs. Now, the latest ballot saw 97% vote in favour of strikes. Hospital leaders are now running worst-case scenario simulations in board meetings to check if they'll be able to cope with the staff shortages. Well, joining me now is health writer and commentator Roy Lilly. Roy, I'm confused. I thought we had a shortage of doctors, so I thought if we've got a shortage that there will be plenty of work for doctors. So how come there isn't enough work, and how come they're going on strike? I just don't get it.
Well, confused. We're all confused. It's a great question. Let me try and answer it. Look, I'm just reading the BMA summary here. The resident doctors are claiming, and they're probably right, that 34% of them, just over a third of them, had no substantive employment or regular work from August 2025. And that figure goes up to nearly half amongst those who've finished their second year of training. What's happened is we've got more training doctors than we've got actual substantive posts for them to work in the hospitals. And so the difficulty is, it comes back to the usual thing of funding and the hospitals trying to find the posts for the doctors. The root cause of that is there's about a $6 billion deficit across the whole of the NHS system. That includes the trust hospitals, and there's huge pressure on them to get their finances back into balance. So the difficulty is, now they're not expanding their workforce. So we're seeing it in GPs as well. So there's an imbalance between the workforce and the actual work when the first-year doctors come out of training. They've threatened to go on strike. I mean, I'm not sure they can. What they're doing is as you know, the junior doctors, the so-called resident doctors now, are already in dispute with the NHS. They've been on strike already once this year, and there are now ongoing talks with Wes Streeting about where they're going to go with the money and some of the terms and conditions of their employment. So these doctors who are really part of that mix, but they voted separately, these first-year training doctors have hitched their dispute onto the existing dispute, and they're threatening to go on strike. Whether they will or not, well, that's the $64,000 question. I mean, my guess is we're in the situation now where no news is good news, because Streeting and the resident doctors have been in discussions now for some time. I think that the kind of gossip and what you read on the wires is the resident doctors have kind of got the message. The public are in no mood to support another doctor's strike. I think the message is getting through to their leadership that the UK economy is in a really bad way, and no one's going to come up with a few billion quid to pay them some more money. So then all the time it's quiet, and all the time they're talking, it's good news.
I guess. But so what is the solution then for these junior doctors to give them more work? Because obviously we want to get the waiting lists down, we want people to be able to see doctors whenever it's necessary, and we don't want to be relying on foreign imported doctors when we've got a wealth of doctors here who could possibly do the jobs instead. So I don't see why there's no real investment to make sure that these doctors that are really needed get work.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, the overseas doctors versus the younger training doctors. Well, generally speaking, the overseas doctors are more senior, and the junior doctors are junior doctors, and they're in a sort of earlier stage of their training. So it's not quite an equivalent argument. But as far as the imbalance is concerned, well, you're right. What is happening is that there are huge financial pressures on the NHS to get back into balance. They're in business terms, they're doing what we would call overtrading. They're doing more work than they're actually paid for. They're doing more work because of the general demand. I mean, they've gone through a pretty bad summer where there's been a lot of exacerbations in existing conditions for elderly people and so on. So they've had a sort of winter crisis in the summer to deal with. There's a huge pressure on them, of course, to get waiting lists down. At the last election, we all voted Labour because they said they were going to bring waiting lists down. Well, they haven't. Actually, about 1.5 million people are joining the waiting list every month, and only 1.7 are actually coming off the waiting list every month. So it's kind of imbalanced, and they're not making much of an impact. They've made some impact on the 2-year waiters and on the 1-year waiters, but I mean, there's just such an enormous pressure on the NHS. There's a financial pressure because of the state of the economy to get it back into balance. I mean, there is no way that the chief executive of the NHS is going to be able to go to the Treasury for more money. There is already they're trying to cut management staff, and they made announcements about cutting management staff, and Sir Jim Mackey, who is the chief executive of the NHS, is now kind of standing almost with his trousers down, where people are saying, well, you said to make everybody redundant, we lined everybody up to go, but there's no money to pay any redundancy money, because the Treasury is saying, if you want to sack people, you find the money.
Well, obviously, the balance, we do need a wealth of junior doctors at the bottom to fill the gaps later on. Listen, Roy Lilly, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much for your thoughts. That's Roy Lilly. He's a health writer and a commentator. Thank you. Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. Exclusive access to the frontline officers leading the fight back against London's phone theft epidemic. But if you're in search of some holiday sun, here's the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries, all sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Looking ahead to tomorrow across southern parts of Europe, there's a lot of fine weather around. A few spots of rain here and there, a couple of showers starting to push their way into parts of Portugal, maybe around some coastal parts of Spain. Otherwise, a generally fine picture here. Also generally dry across much of Italy as well. Further east into parts of Greece, also around Croatia, a few showery bursts, but a lot of that clearing away. So actually, as we go through the end of the week into the weekend, it's looking dry for many of us and warm in the sunshine.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
A day for us today, Penny, with losing our friend, Mr. John Stapleton, totally unexpectedly. I mean, of course, we knew he was ill.
Yes,
but we
didn't know he was
We
ill.
didn't know he was about to die.
Well, no. When he came in, we came in to the studio, and the three of us kind of were reunited.
Just a month ago.
Just a month ago, exactly. And yesterday, the lovely thing was that I had so many texts from people who you'd recognise as well from GMTV days, other people as well. Everybody saying what a gent he was and how kind and, you know, from my point of view, the reason he stayed a friend, you know, obviously, you know, you have these, you call them screen husbands, screen wives, but the reason he stayed a friend was because he was genuinely funny. He made me laugh a lot, all the time. And in fact, I just recently did a little podcast with him. We were talking about things that he hated and everything, and he was talking about he hated people driving around with cars with their windows open and really loud music.
Yeah.
And he was just going, you know, he said, I just shout at them, can you turn it up a bit? There's somebody in Australia who can't quite hear the words. So you never expect it, you never want it. The people you love, you want to live forever. That's it.
That's very well said, yeah. I obviously was very friendly. He was, when we say a gentleman, he was gentle. He was a gentle soul. And then he became very nasty. It was very difficult to like and get on with. It was just you know, when Manchester United started to decline in terms of superiority, and he became so... He became so arrogant.
No,
did he really? He was unbearable.
He so didn't.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Good Afternoon Britain. And at Scotland Yard, officers have smashed an organised crime gang believed responsible for smuggling huge amounts of stolen mobile phones to China. The operation is part of a major crackdown on an epidemic of phone crime in the capital. And GB News' Home and Security editor Mark White has been given exclusive access to frontline officers as they go after those trading in those handsets.
Dramatic scenes in a North London street as police move in to arrest members of an organised crime gang. Inside their vehicle, evidence of a multi-million-pound trade in phone theft. A large number of stolen smartphones are discovered, all wrapped in tinfoil to block any phone signal and prevent their owners tracing them. After a year-long investigation, Scotland Yard says it has now dismantled the criminal operation that they believe is responsible for smuggling more than 40,000 stolen smartphones over to China. That's around half the total stolen in phone thefts around the capital last year. Officers have now recovered thousands of stolen smartphones as their investigation continues.
Randomly picking up phones, these are all high-end
Pro models across the various iPhone range, your 15s, your 16s. And this is just a sample of what we've recovered so far, and there's over 100 phones here, probably closer to 200 in this box alone.
Is everyone ready, yeah? Everyone ready?
We're on board with this team as they head to raid 3 mobile phone shops in North London, all suspected of trading in stolen handsets. Many of the handsets stolen in street robberies end up in shops like this. The devices they're not able to unlock and sell on end up being shipped to the likes of China, Hong Kong and Algeria.
What was he in the process of doing? Do we know?
For these officers, it is now the slow time process of checking all of the details of these mobile phones to determine whether any have been stolen. But they know these small independent phone shops are playing an increasing role in the epidemic of phone crime.
2 tablets, 2 phones from Safe 2, so if we can run them separately.
Across the 3 shops, officers recovered multiple stolen phones and arrested 2 men on suspicion of money laundering after finding £40,000 in cash.
So my warning to people that are involved in this criminal enterprise, whether it be shop workers, the shopkeepers, or even the faceless enterprise businessmen who own multiple different venues, is that you may have felt like you were acting with impunity and that we weren't coming after you and we couldn't come after you, and that actually the crime pays. So if eventually we do come, then that's just a business loss. Is that we are coming after you, we are going to come and conduct warrants, not just in your business premises, but we will target you at home, we'll target you in your cars. Nowhere is safe to conduct criminal enterprise.
Intense police activity has seen mobile phone street robberies fall by 13% this year. But while street-level thieves can earn £200 or £300 for each device they steal, phone crime is likely to remain at serious levels for some time to come. Mark White, GB News.
So annoying having your phone stolen, isn't it? Well, we're heading back to the Conservative Party conference in Manchester. But first, let's take a look at the weather with Honor Krizik.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Through today, we'll see spells of rain pushing into northern areas, but to the north of this, sunny spells, a chance of some showers, and elsewhere it's likely to be a slightly cloudier picture compared to yesterday afternoon. Where we'll see the bulk of the rain is where we see this cold front slowly shifting its way southwards, clearing Scotland, Northern Ireland, and pushing into parts of southern Scotland, northern parts of England and Wales. The rain should be mostly light, but it could persist through much of the afternoon. To the north of this, sunny spells, a risk of a few showers around coast of Scotland, and to the south, a cloudier picture, but we will see some brighter spells, particularly across the east. Feeling warm where we do see any sunshine, highs reaching around 18 to 19 degrees Celsius. Across the south, we'll see cloudy skies persist through much of the evening. Once again, we could see some breaks in the cloud overnight. That's where we'll likely see some mist and fog develop, and potentially some drizzle around hilly areas of Wales to finish off the day. But across Northern Ireland, southern parts of Scotland, much clearer skies. So it's going to be turning chilly here as soon as that sun goes down. A chance of mist and fog once again, possibly even some isolated frost. But around Scotland, we'll eventually see more cloud pushing from the west. Still a continuation of those showers and starting to turn quite breezy once again, particularly around exposed coasts of Scotland. This band of rain will continue to sink its way southwards, and that will lead us into quite a murky start across parts of Wales, central parts of England, and across any southern counties. Once again, plenty of cloud leading to quite a grey and murky start. But to the north of this, bright skies as we head towards dawn, but feeling much chillier. Temperatures in rural spots likely to dip below freezing, but across the south, another fairly mild start. Now the cloud and the remnants of this rain, once again fairly light drizzle just pushing into southern counties, but could be quite persistent through the course of the day. So fairly grey skies here, but to the north of this, a return of the sunshine. Across Scotland though, once again a return of the cloud and also some drizzle, particularly across western spots. Feeling warm once again in any sunshine, highs reaching around 18 degrees.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
This is your chance to win a motorhome and cash in our biggest giveaway to date. Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be the proud owner of this 2025 Benamar Primero. It comfortably accommodates 4 people and can be driven on your standard driving licence. Plus, you'll also bank an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. Make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here.
I'm Michelle Duke, Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens. Opinion and debate. And of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. Loads more coming up on today's show. Of course, if you just tuned in, welcome. It is 2 o'clock. I'm also joined throughout the show by Tom Harwood at the Conservative Party conference. Now, the Conservative Party loses a slew of councillors to the Reform UK, with more than 20 elections so far today. All the while, Robert Jenrick produced a judge's wig from a briefcase to hold up as a prop during part of his speech, saying that he will sack judges with pro-migrant bias. Have a listen.
An unbiased mediator. That is what a judge should be. Today, I've uncovered dozens of judges with links to Open Borders charities.
It left many asking if now it was too late for the Conservatives to save themselves.
That's right. Here at the Conservative Party conference, there is a bit of a mood amongst the members. Is it really Robert Jenrick who's stealing the limelight today? Or is Kemi Badenoch ruling the roost? We'll find out.
The Tories pledged to give police more stop-and-search powers in high crime areas. But why didn't they do that whilst they were in office? And incredible news. Well, you know, maybe it can reach out to people as well. But researchers have successfully reversed Alzheimer's in mice in what could turn out to be a breakthrough in treating the disease. So earlier today, you may have caught wind of it. Robert Jenrick's speech, his speech about what he would do. He pulled out a judge's wig from the bag. I didn't know that the reason the judges put the wig on is so that they could change character and then become completely neutral. That's a bit like me with my wig on. I'm totally different without it. You wouldn't actually recognise me, I guess. But some of the things he said, he talked about Lord Hermer, called him a useful idiot, simply, and that those people kind of hate Britain. And it was quite an impassioned speech, and some might say it was very, very good, and that perhaps he was kind of vying for leadership. He also said that Keir Starmer was a cross between his management style of David Brent, remember him from The Office, and with the wit of Baldrick. Very good, very eloquent, very interesting speech. If you missed it, check it out on gbnews.com. We have it live for you. But stay with us, send us your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Nana, thank you very much, and good afternoon to you. Just after 2 o'clock. Well, it is 2 years to the day since Hamas militants stormed into southern Israel, killing 1,200 people and taking 251 hostages. Israelis are gathering across the country this afternoon to mark the anniversary. At the site of the Nova Festival massacre, flowers, candles and tributes now line the memorial. Families of those still missing say they'll keep fighting until every hostage is returned. Meanwhile, Israel's military campaign in Gaza continues, with more than 67,000 people now dead and most homes damaged or destroyed. That comes as indirect peace talks between Israel and Hamas have resumed in Egypt, as hopes are rising for a breakthrough in the war in Gaza. Egypt's foreign minister says the talks are centred on creating a security plan for Israel's full withdrawal. Negotiators are also seeking a guarantee to unrestricted aid access to the territory. Cairo says the ultimate goal is to unite the West Bank and Gaza, a move closer to lasting two-state solutions. Here, meanwhile, pro-Palestine protesters are set to defy Sir Keir Starmer's call not to demonstrate on the second anniversary of the attacks. University students from King's College, UCL and LSE are among those walking out of classes this afternoon in London. It comes after the Prime Minister branded the planned protests un-British and urged students to show some humanity. Writing in The Times, he added the UK remains committed to peace with a safe and secure Israel alongside a viable Palestinian state. In politics, Robert Jenrick has caused a stir at the Tory party conference today, arriving on stage with a black box and revealing what was inside. It turned out to be a judge's wig. The Shadow Justice Secretary used the prop to call for a crackdown on what he calls activist judges, saying those linked to Open Borders charities are like referees who support the opposition. The Shadow Justice Secretary also launched this blistering attack on Sir Keir Starmer.
We all knew that Keir Starmer would be a bad Prime Minister. But I don't think anyone anticipated he would be this bad. A freebie-grabbing, free speech stifling, criminal releasing, tax raising, farmer hating, Brexit betraying, aspiration sapping, sorry excuse for a leader.
Well, earlier at that same conference in Manchester, the hall was barely a third full for the Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp's speech. He admits that past Tory governments made a mistake on immigration and said that legal migration has now been too high for too long. But under new leadership, he says things will change.
For many years now, legal migration has been far too high. High under successive governments, including the last one. It was a mistake. It should never have been allowed to happen. And under new leadership, we pledge it will never happen again.
In other news, police say they've busted an international gang accused of smuggling up to 40,000 stolen phones from the UK heading to China. In the Met's biggest ever crackdown on mobile theft, 18 suspects have been arrested, more than 2,000 stolen devices seized. The operation began when a victim tracked their iPhone to a Heathrow warehouse, sparking raids on multiple properties across London and Hertfordshire. Officers believe the gang exported up to half of all phones stolen in London, with devices sold abroad for up to £4,000 each. And first-year doctors in England have voted overwhelmingly to strike over jobs and pay. The BMA says that 97% backed action amid fears of unemployment when current contracts end next summer. More than half of second-year doctors also say they have no guaranteed work from August. Talks with the government are continuing, but the union says both pay and job security must be fixed to avoid future walkouts. Those are the headlines for now. I'll be back with you shortly. Now, though, it's over to Nana.
Thank you, Sam. Good afternoon, Britain. It is just gone 7 minutes after 2 o'clock, and the Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick, has unleashed a scathing attack on Labour, calling the Prime Minister a sorry excuse for a leader. That was also part of his conference speech, where he launched another attack on Attorney General Lord Hermer.
I present to you the Attorney General, Richard Hermer. Like one of those infamous mafia lawyers of yesteryear, Hermer always chose a particular type of client. Shamima Begum, Osama bin Laden's right-hand man, terrorists involved in 7/7.
But with 20 councillors defecting from the Tories, and that's just from today alone, and they're defecting to Reform, is the party beyond saving? Well, shall we cross live now to the conference, the Conservative Party conference? GB News' Deputy Political Editor, Tom Harwood, there. He's also joined by the Mayor of Cambridge and Peterborough, Paul Bristow. Tom.
Yes, Nana, interesting to be joined by Paul Bristow here in our set at the centre of Conservative Party conference, because, Paul, you are someone who was a bit of an aberration in the local elections last May. You were the only Conservative who won in an area. I mean, of course, there were councillors individually who won. You were the only mayoralty that won that sort of went against the tide. Why?
Well, it was a con game, and I think one of the reasons I did so well is because Peterborough, I've got a loyal support there. But do you know something? I went out and I looked like a winner. I won the Battle of Eyeballs, I think, as well as the Battle of Ideas. I think that's what we need to do now as a party.
It does feel like, even though the election is probably 4 years away, this entire party conference is looking to what's going to happen at the next election. Is this party going to survive the next election? Is this an existential moment for the Conservative Party?
Well, no. I mean, look, obviously it's Kemi's first party conference as leader. She's got to set out her stall. She's clearly done a lot of the thinking over the last year, but we've got to win that Battle of Eyeballs. Things are very different than they were under our last historic defeat in 1997. You know, GB News exists, OK? We've got to fill the airways with people wanting to comment. If we don't fill those airways, other people will. We've got a populist challenger on the right, and who would have ever thought that this government would have collapsed as quickly as it has in terms of popular support?
In some ways, that's been bad for the Conservative Party. If the Labour Party had been halfway competent over the course of the last 12 months, perhaps there wouldn't have been that vacuum of the fall in support that was looking for somewhere else to go. Perhaps you would have had time as a party to go off and do your deep thinking, your 200-page legal reports, your reviews into the ECHR, all of the sort of stuff that's been going on. But while you've been going off and thinking and working out your policy, a man called Nigel has stepped into the vacuum and soaked up all that support.
Well, we've got to win that Battle of Eyeballs, as I keep saying. I was no supporter of Rishi Sunak when I was a Member of Parliament, and I knew at any point I could have turned around and said, well, you know, Rishi Sunak, he's not the right man for the job, and the headline would have been Top Tory says. I mean, Top Tory, I'm not even a household name in my own household. But that's the nature of the world that we live on. Instant comment.
Paul, you're one of the two most senior elected Conservative officials. It's just you and Ben Houchen who run any part of the country as a Metro Mayor.
You're going to make me blush, Tom. I'm going to have to get my head out of this stand in a minute. No, but the point of my story is that you have to win the Battle of Eyeballs as well as the Battle of Ideas. Look at the policies we've come out with at this conference. You know, what Robert Jenrick said today about the Sentencing Council, the work that the lawyers have done, the barristers have done on our ECHR withdrawal policy. We're winning those Battle of Ideas, I think. I think Reform's policies, they collapse within 5 minutes, but we're not winning that Battle of Eyeballs.
Reform would say that you're stealing their policies. They, of course, for a long time have supported withdrawal from the ECHR. They, for a long time, have supported no benefit benefits to non-citizens. And now the Conservative Party is in these areas aping those policies.
Well, I remember at the party conference in 2023 when I was a member of a group called the New Conservatives arguing for Britain's withdrawal from the ECHR. But being in government is difficult. It's not like just standing at the end of a bar saying, well, we should simply do this. You know, what we actually have to do the hard thinking. You have to replace what you're going to get rid of with something else. I think that's what we've done. So we're winning that battle of ideas. We'll continue to do that over the next 3 years, but we've also got to win the battle of eyeballs.
And that battle of eyeballs, as I think we've said now umpteen times in this conversation, it's really important. It really matters. Most voters don't pay attention to the day-to-day cut and thrust of politics.
No,
I mean, most voters can't name anyone in the cabinet beyond the Prime Minister.
No.
How does a party like this, that is languishing at third place in the polls, actually make itself relevant to people's lives?
Well, we've got to show that we're up for this. We've got to show that we want this job. I think that's half, the challenge. We've got to show that we're hungry for power. And I think if we do that, we will see the rewards at the ballot box. You've got to look like a winner. And we see Robert Jenrick, we see, Chris Philp, come in with their videos looking like they're hungry for power.
Yeah, I don't think anyone can claim that those two men are not hungry for power. But do you think it's those sort of stunts? Robert Jenrick holding up that judge's wig, those images that will no doubt dominate the airwaves for the next 12 or so hours. Are those the sort of things, are those the sort of gimmicks, almost Boris-like gimmicks, that need to happen more?
Well, I think you nailed it on the head earlier. You said most people don't pay that much attention to politics. They may fleetingly see it from the corner of their eyeballs when they walk into a screen somewhere and watch the good channel of GBNews, or they may see it when they turn on their phone, very briefly, a little bit of politics. Most people aren't studying the polls or looking at what individual politicians have said. So you've got to stand out. You can't uninvent the world as it is. Social media, GBNews, Talk TV. You've got to lean into it. And that's what I want to see the Conservative Party do. That's what I did. What I'm doing as Mayor of Cambridge and Peterborough.
Do you regret that politics has become so sort of trivialised in a way that it has to be gimmicks and slogans and sound bites, whereas back in the day, back in the sort of pre-mass media age, you'd have a serious hour-long conversation with no flashy gimmicks, no flashy titles, just people sitting in a room and talking about the detail. Have we lost that?
Well, I don't regret it. It's just a feature of what politics is like. You can't uninvent it or disinvent it. It exists, so you've got to lean into it. But look, as long as you do both things, as long as you do the hard work, as long as you think about policy and come up with the detail behind it, instead of this, well, we just need to do this. Being in government is hard, and you have to come up with that sort of policy. But if you can combine that, with that ability to sell your ideas, I think that's the right way forward. And as I said,
is this Paul Bristow calling for Kemi Badenoch to get on a water slide, to step on a kayak, to do the Ed Davey style stunt anytime soon?
No, I mean, Kemi's a serious person, right? Okay, she's a serious person, got a very direct style. She says it like it is. And I think the more the British people see of Kemi, her style, not suffering fools, saying it like it is, the more people will like her. And the more people who see Ed Davey, I think the smaller number of people will be voting Liberal Democrat.
OK, well, Paul Bristow, Mayor of Peterborough and Cambridgeshire, thanks indeed for joining us here at the Heart of Conservative Party Conference. Back to you, Nana.
Thank you very much, Tom. Interesting what he said about Robert Jenrick, though, but has anybody mentioned the comments that were recorded back in May where Robert Jenrick complained about not seeing another white face in Birmingham, in a neighbourhood?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting element of course, Robert Jenrick was talking to all sorts of broadcasters earlier this morning, and one of the things that they were asking him is what does he mean by that? Now, he's put forward an argument that he means that we should not be a ghettoised society, that you shouldn't have these sort of areas of the country that only have one sort of identity, that we should have a more pluralistic society. And of course, to be fair, in his conversation, in his original speech, he did say that he didn't mean it in a sort of racialised way, but I think that's been missed a little bit. I think it's clearly clumsy language, but I suppose we'll have to wait to see if it actually does him any damage. I think perhaps there is a wider feeling out there in the country that there are some parts of the country that have been left behind. Well, Nana, I'm delighted to be joined by Robert Courts here in the studio. I'm sorry, I wasn't quite expecting you to be jumped in and thrust upon us. Robert, this is of course a big day in terms of announcements.
Yeah.
Robert Jenrick has announced a big policy with regards to undoing the Blairite reforms to the judiciary.
Yeah.
That's a big step.
It is a big step. I mean, he's put his finger on one of the big issues about the way this country is governed, which is the way that the Blairite reforms moved power away from those who are elected to those who aren't elected. And you see this happening across the whole swathe of government. And it's one of those great frustrations you have when you're a minister, that you try to do something and you find the lever's not attached to anything because the power has been moved elsewhere into quangos. And this happens across all sorts of areas of government policy. And the bit that Rob's been talking about today is in the area of, particularly of sentencing policy, where the overall policy direction should be set by Parliament, which is elected, rather than set entirely by judges. It's important to just be clear. Obviously, judicial independence in an operational sense is critical, but it's always there for the elected people, Parliament, to put that hand on the tiller to correct.
Is there an irony in one of his big announcements, this idea that the Lord Chancellor again becomes the person who appoints judges rather than some quote-unquote apolitical commission? Of course, there's lots of criticisms that these apolitical commissions are not apolitical, but isn't there an irony here that he's trying to make the judiciary, in his words, more apolitical by getting a politician to appoint them?
The point is clarity and transparency, because when you said a second ago about, quote-unquote apolitical bodies, is that you just don't really know, because any human being has a view. That's the nature of humanity, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you do need to understand what someone's standpoint is. The advantage to what Rob's proposing is the fact that that person is accountable to Parliament. So there is a built-in democratic check factor. You know where they're coming from politically, it is transparent, and you're able to hold them to account. That's the key thing, whereas currently there's a gap where that doesn't take place.
Now, of course, the Sentencing Council was set up to sort of weigh everything in the round. I wonder if making that more political, if making that a decision of Parliament, does that create an arms race where politicians will want to outbid each other in terms of how harsh the sentences can be? Does that skew the system somewhat?
Well, to a certain extent we're there already, because the overall sentencing limit is set by Parliament. So you already have a position where people will say we're going to be tough on a particular sentence, and they will change the upper limit. What the Sentencing Council does is set guidelines within that limit, so at what level you would be sentenced for a particular gravity. Now, we've seen, of course, over the last few months where there's been a real lot of controversy because some factors were deemed by the Sentencing Council to be more important than others. Now, they may not have intended it that way, but that is intrinsically a political judgment that they took, whether they realised it or not.
Do you think the Sentencing Council created two-tier guidelines?
In that circumstance, that would have done so. The Sentencing Council are a number of different people. It's not simply one body. It's the senior judiciary
and to be clear, this would be that if someone, for example, was black or was disabled or a woman in certain circumstances, that they would be treated differently by a judge because of their identity.
That's the story, and that's exactly what was being proposed back there, which understandably was hugely controversial. The whole point about justice, you're familiar with the statue that's outside the Royal Courts of Justice, which is the Statue of Justice with a blindfold. And the reason Statue of Justice has a blindfold is that justice is meant to be blind. It's not meant to be, looking at you or me or anyone else. You're meant to be completely blind to someone's background, to what kind of person they are, and you judge them on the basis of what it is that they have done.
Lots of symbolism there. Blindfolds, wigs. I mean, it's remarkable, this sort of history of symbolism within the judicial system. I wanted to ask you a more political question, though. A lot of criticism towards Robert Jenrick from some quarters of the media this morning. Old comments of his surfacing saying he visited an area of Birmingham where he saw no white faces. That wasn't blindfolded of him to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not familiar with that comment that he's made, and clearly there's use of language that politicians use at all times as they're trying to get their point across, and it may be that didn't come across quite in the way that he was intending. I'd have to understand the context for that. But I think from a justice perspective, what is absolutely clear is that you shouldn't be judging people on the basis of a certain characteristic. You should be looking at everybody even-handedly. But above all, the most important thing is it has to be accountable to Parliament, because that's the democratic check mechanism that when something goes wrong, There's a legitimately expected way to put it right. That's what Rob's getting at today.
OK, Robert Courts, that's indeed for joining us here at the GB News stand. So much to unpack. They're rolling back that raft of Blairite reforms to our judiciary. Back to you, Nana.
Thank you very much, Tom. Brilliant. Well, good afternoon. This is Good Afternoon Britain, coming up to 22 minutes after 2 o'clock. Lots more coming up on today's show. The Tories pledged to give police more stop and search powers in high crime areas. But why didn't they do that when they were in office? You're with GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. The Tories have proposed wider stop and search powers for police in crime hotspots. Under these plans, police would be able to act without having grounds for suspicion. And this comes as the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, announced they would hire 10,000 extra police officers if he returns to government. That's a big if.
But Labour seems more interested in what people say on social media than they are in catching burglars. It is time to end the madness. We would end this nonsense and we will abolish non-crime hate incidents.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's absolutely absurd, isn't it? Well, joining us now is former police officer Norman Brennan. Good afternoon, Norman. Well, I mean, he's saying sense. He's saying sense about non-crime hate incidences, but why he didn't say that when they were in office and abolished them, I'm pretty sure they emerged under their time in office.
Nana, why do you think the streets of London and Britain are lawless at present? And before you answer that, I'll help you with the answer. It's because in 2009, Theresa May, the then Home Secretary under David Cameron, crippled British policing by almost 20,000 police officers and tens of thousands of backroom staff. And while the public ask themselves now, while law and order is out of control on the streets of London and Britain, which I'm telling you it is, it's down to the Conservatives. Although we've recovered by getting an extra 10 or 15,000 police officers, I'm afraid the police have not been able to take the streets back. So it's a bit rich for the Conservatives to come out now they're not in power and say what we should be doing.
Yeah, I hear you. Non-crime hate incidents is one of the things where there's loads of paperwork when it's not even a crime, so why are you bothering with it? And also they're talking now about stop and search. Is he right about that, that we need to increase the powers so that police can stop and search people without even having suspicion and in what they call hotspots, although I don't know what that definition of a hotspot would be?
Well, the police already have powers to stop and search. And I'll be quite honest with you, Nana, when I was in policing for 31 years, I stopped hundreds of suspects, both black and white, predominantly black in the areas that I policed, which were high ethnicity areas. And I seized dozens of knives, and that was just one officer. So stop and search saves lives. It's important. It's a very important tool in the police toolbox. It's not the only one, but it's police officers, predominantly in London, that stand with young black mothers and fathers, and a child is laying dead on a mortuary slab 5 feet away, and they plead, bereft, they're screaming, please do something. So the police have the task to actually do something, and what they need to do is go out and stop and target those that are actually committing crime. And I can tell you, Nana, when I was in a robbery squad in North London for 6 years, it wasn't the colour that we targeted, it was the crimes. But the black community in London and the areas I policed were responsible for disproportionate amount of murders, stabbings, robberies and street crime. So it was those types that actually were committing the crime that we targeted. And it's some people in the black community, instead of looking within of the problems that they may have been able to help deal with, they always blame the police, and they say stop and search is racist. Well, it's not racist if the police are following statistics and the types of crime that certain individuals commit. If outside London, street robberies were committed predominantly by young white boys, I'd be concerned if we were stopping more black boys than white boys.
Well, also, you're actually protecting a lot of the black people from themselves, because it's often black-on-black stabbings, so they're killing each other, and that's the other thing. So the police are there to be helpful to the black community because they are killing each other. The highest number of black people dying in these stabbings are black people who are killing each other. So I don't think it's racist at all to stop and search. But one thing I would say is, given what happened at that police station in Euston, where they were the language and the behaviour was terrible. I think someone had their fingers broken, apparently, by the police. Is it, giving the police more powers, do they need to have a bit more, I don't know, more training as to how they stop and search? And do we need to ensure that they're doing it properly? Because people will be quite compliant if you treat people with respect, even if they are criminals. Not all of them, but some of them will be.
Do you know what, Nana? You and I watch social media. We post on social media. We always see and have posts that are regurgitated of the bad things that police do. And the police are not perfect. They're far from perfect. However, we never hear of the tens of thousands of men and women that get up every day, that stand between good and bad, right and wrong, and have to face knife attacks. Only yesterday, I posted on the 40th anniversary of PC Keith Blakelock. Do you know what, Nana? When everybody's running away from crime, complains about the police not doing enough, when we run towards that danger, when people like me, when I was serving, were stabbed and almost murdered, who actually cares about us? The ones that listen to your concerns, the ones that act upon your concerns, and getting to the point. I could say to everybody in Britain, if I was a politician, I will give you all £5,000 each. That would really transform so many lives. So all these politicians now standing up at the lectern at their party conferences, promise of the world, I'm afraid it's a bit too late and it's all froth. What we need, Nana, is substance. We need a government that cares, has vision, has direction, wants the streets to be safe, and employs the tens of thousands of police officers we need. We're 18,000 officers short since 2009 from the population growth. And people like Mayor Khan and Theresa May, when she was in power, wanted the police to stop and search. And over the last 8 or 9 years, stop and search in London has gone down from 1.5 million to 500,000.
It's madness.
We don't have the police officers.
We need them. We need them. Norman Brennan, thank you very much. Good afternoon to you. Right, well, let's cross live now to the Tory party conference as Dame Priti Patel is speaking.
Jack Lepresti, a good friend of us all, someone who served, obviously, as a dedicated Conservative MP for Filton and Bradley Stoke from 2010 to 2024. And he's been on the front line in Ukraine, supporting Ukraine's fight for freedom since the general election as a volunteer. So, Jack, we are blessed to have you here today. It's an absolute honour to be with you today. It really is a privilege. Please welcome Jack as well. Thank you. Thank you. Go down next to me. Thanks so much. Thank you, Jack. So, let me both begin by welcoming you both. We're all sitting in this comfortable conference hall, and of course we all watched and have watched Ukraine, the battle for the last few years, really from the comfort of our TV studios, home and obviously from new studios as well. So can you, both of you, please provide a bit of an insight into the front line, first of all? And I think, Pavlo, if I may start with you, you've been involved in Operation Interflex, which has been an incredible operation, training over 50,000 Ukrainian soldiers. Just tell us exactly about their experiences, what they're confronting, what they're facing, and, you know, what Britain's role has been in actually sort of reinforcing everything that you've all been doing.
Thank you very much. I've been in Operation Interflex since January. And the contribution of the United Kingdom and other countries, because it is 13 countries involved in this process, is really crucial for us, and the quality of training as well. And the day on the front line feels lifetime for our soldiers. And it is cold, mud, exhaustion, but also it is brotherhood and determination. And yeah, Russians use a tactic when they send just waves of attack of Russians infantry without counting the lives. And it is something that we are facing with in the 21st centuries. And also we are trying to, and we are doing that, to increase the quality of training, to keep our soldiers alive.
So thank you for that. And of course, what is so extraordinary, we all remember the pictures in the early days, Putin's brutal war machine, the impact that was having, obviously, on troops on the front line, the awful weather and the terrible conditions. So, Jack, I have to say, I mean, honestly, it's a pleasure to be sitting next to you here today. It's great to see you. Just share a bit of your experience, because obviously life has changed for you since last year. When did you go, and what kind of training have you had to go out there and be on the front line?
Well, I went and signed my contract in mid-January. I went online and applied in November, so it took a couple of months to do the background checks, all the normal process and administration. And yeah, I had a bit of training when I was there, but I wanted initially to be deployed as a rifleman, but a friend of mine from the Ukrainian embassy said that they'd much prefer to use my experience and skills and, believe it or not, diplomacy, which made me laugh. But, you know, foreign relations, procurement, media. But I've spent a bit of time on the front line, but we mustn't forget the nightly drone and missile attacks on our cities in Ukraine. I mean, I know. I always say to my parents, I go to the shelter. I don't all the time. So when I'm led there and I can hear the Shaheeds coming over, Iranian-made drones supplied by Iran and paid for by China, missile strikes, and I think, well, it's tough for me, but I've only been there for a few months. I mean, this has been going on for nearly 4 years. Only the other evening, 5 people were killed in Lviv, civilians, and that's about 30, 40 miles from the Polish border. So it's tough.
And just on this, because clearly on the front line, the psychological impact is really quite severe. Yeah. How do you all cope with this? And Pavlo in particular, with your soldiers, the people that you're with on a daily basis. How do you support one another through a lot of this difficulty? And of course, I have seen many videos of Jack doing news reports and things of that nature. The level of technology that you're all using now is so sophisticated, and clearly this has to help in terms of, you know, being on the front line in the battle that you're all facing.
Yes, totally agree with you. We started to use lots of drones to use them as machine, not soldier's life, to accomplish different tasks. Also, we've got like hard shoulder from our families back home.
Right.
They really support us, and especially when we see the news when Russia bombs our buildings, cities, hospitals, schools, and we feel that we have to standing strong and keep our job to make sure that they are safe.
And Jack, how have you found that?
Well, I find the spirit of the Ukrainian soldier who's been, in many cases, on the front line for years, just astonishing.
Yeah.
You know, despite all the difficulty and hardship, you know, they're defending their homeland. And as you said, I heard you when I was just waiting. You know, this is our war, it's Europe's war, and they're aware of that. And you know, the bravery and resilience is just astonishing, frankly.
And I think that really speaks to us as a party, the fact that we've been out there from the outset, you know, supporting, defending Ukraine, because it is about our shared values and our freedom. But the level of heroism that we have seen, the resilience of the people of Ukraine has been absolutely astounding. And that gives us all heart. And I have to ask both of you, I mean, from a political perspective, here we are sitting in Manchester. We've seen this conflict going on, but do you think we just all became very complacent about Russia over recent years? And now, of course, this is the threat of our times. And this wakes us all up now, whether it's now through NATO or neighbouring countries. We must all make sure that we become more resilient and we learn from these terrible experiences that you're seeing in Ukraine.
Yeah, all of us must understand that Putin's understand not words but force, and as we can see, he uses hybrid warfare now.
Yes.
And like energy, disinformation, cyber attacks, and for him, chaos is a weapon. And he's not testing, he's already doing this stuff. And we have to understand that and do our stuff better, yeah?
I mean, it's so interesting, isn't it, when you think about countries such as Moldova and Georgia, the fact that their elections are being disrupted, there's hybrid warfare taking place. We know about this and we see it ourselves, but of course it's how we draw that influence together and work with other countries to stop that influence, because they are sowing the seeds of chaos effectively. And Jack, you're seeing that all the time.
Well, I was just going to say, actually, that the Ukrainians are very aware of the support they have here in the UK, and they're very grateful of it. And every time I get in a taxi or I speak to somebody and they realise I'm English, they say, English, Boris Johnson, fantastic. You know, they really do see him as the saviour of Ukraine.
He was on the video earlier as well, right? For good reason.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know. And when I say I know him, they're like even more shocked, you know. But
there's a serious point to this, though, isn't there?
Well,
in the strength that we gave and everything we did.
And whilst I think, you know, it's amazing what the Ukrainians are doing as far as holding the line. The lines on the map haven't really moved much in a couple of years. And in fact, recently, the Ukrainians, the Azov Brigade in particular, have managed to push the Russians back from a couple of places they were quite keen to take. Ukraine can still lose this war. You know, if Europe doesn't step up with production and supply and support, you can see the Russians grinding out a victory, or at least a settlement, which is completely unsatisfactory and will allow Putin to come back.
So that is Dame Priti Patel speaking at the Conservative Party conference with some serving servicemen. Right, well, stay with us. 40 minutes after 2 o'clock, and Conservative politician Andrew Boff has criticised a session on gender identity at the Conservative Party conference after he heckled the panel, including former Olympic swimmer Sharon Davies. Have a listen to this interview.
Well, I've been to a session of the conference, and it was called a debate, and it was called Gender Critical, the meaning of sex. And it wasn't really a debate, it was curated hatred. There were no voices from trans people on the stage. There were no voices from the other side of the argument. And I felt I needed to address the imbalance in that debate. Why aren't they on stage? Why aren't you hearing their voices? How are they going to be included? You're talking about just exclude. What about including trans people and understanding that they have rights too? What we had in the conference hall today was one side of the argument with hateful little anecdotes in order to support their miserable case.
All right, let's discuss this with Charlotte Kenyon from the LGB Alliance. Charlotte, what's your take on that?
Well, I'm afraid, as far as I'm concerned, that's fairly typical of the kind of single-issue obsessive that Mr. Boff represents. There was a conversation there between Claire Coutinho, Marion from For Women Scotland, and Sharon Davies, talking about the implications of the Supreme Court ruling and for women, and particularly women in sport and fairness in sport. So it was quite ironic that what we were talking about, and Sharon Davies was talking about, was the need for fairness in sport, that women needed to be heard and listened to, and that's what's happened through the Supreme Court ruling, and up pops a man to interrupt them and stop them speaking.
And the irony is he was saying that trans people haven't been considered. And the bottom line is it's women's sport. So if you're a woman, it doesn't matter whether you've chosen to be trans or not, but it's about being a biological female, which is why that's what the discussion should be. And it's interesting that he felt that trans people were excluded in a conversation about biological women.
Absolutely, Nana, and those points were made. I mean, I thought Sharon's reaction, in fact, the whole panel was excellent. You know, there he is trying to interrupt the conversation between three women. She turns to him and invites him to discuss with her, and I wasn't right next to him, so I couldn't hear precisely what he was saying, but I understand what he was saying was trans rights, what about the trans people? And what I could hear Sharon saying was, I'm fully supportive of trans rights. The Supreme Court made it absolutely clear that nobody's rights have been undermined. But what have you got against fairness for women in sport? Because if you include men in women's sport, women lose their category, and there cannot be fairness for women in sport if men are included in that category. It's as simple as that. And I thought also Claire Coutinho and Marion from For Women Scotland were great. Claire didn't interrupt. No one tried to silence the man. They let that conversation run. And of course he had no answer for Sharon, so in the end he stopped, and we were all able to carry on enjoying the discussion.
It is interesting, isn't it, that someone who is a trans woman, so a biological male, deeply does believe that they are female, and that's quite hard for us as women to kind of take in, because we know the realities of being a woman and the differences between male and female, which in terms of physical strength are very, very relevant, and also in terms of biological reality of most women being able to give birth, having periods, most of us going through the menopause. These things are what define us as women.
Absolutely, Nana, and Sharon was, gave chapter on verse in this. She's very articulate, and she was describing the physical differences between men and women, which are critical in all sport. And by the way, I used to play a lot of sport myself. I played county cricket, and whilst I practiced with men because it made me stronger, I wouldn't have wanted to compete in a mixed league because it's not a level playing field. And she was saying there is no single peer-reviewed study which comes out to any single conclusion other than that men have every single possible advantage, be it strength, the length of their levers, and all the rest, from before puberty, actually. So you're absolutely right. And, before we even get on to things like childbirth and the impact of men claiming to be women and then claiming to be lesbians, which, of course, an LGBT alliance makes us, well, we're incredulous. Once we stop laughing, of course, it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. Charlotte Kenyon, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you. That's Charlotte Kenyon. She's from the LGBT Alliance.
Thank you for inviting me.
At the Conservative Party conference. Thank you so much. Right, this is Good Afternoon Britain, 45 minutes after 2 o'clock. We're live on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. Researchers have successfully, this is phenomenal, reversed Alzheimer's in mice, though, but it could turn out to be a breakthrough in treating the disease. You won't want to miss that. That is coming up next. But now, if you're in search of some holiday sun, here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine? Won't we need some cover?
No worries, all sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Looking ahead to tomorrow across southern parts of Europe, there's a lot of fine weather around. A few spots of rain here and there, a couple of showers starting to push their way into parts of Portugal, maybe around some coastal parts of Spain. Otherwise, a generally fine picture here. Also generally dry across much of Italy as well. Further east into parts of Greece, also around Croatia, a few showery bursts, but a lot of that clearing away. So actually, as we go through the end of the week into the weekend, it's looking dry for many of us and warm in the sunshine.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dordme, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I ever got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, though. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel. Good afternoon, Britain. Now, this is phenomenal. Listen to this. Alzheimer's disease has been reversed in mice, though, but it is a breakthrough that offers hope that the disease could be curable, because it means it can be done. They could reverse the plaque that builds up in the brain that blocks the communication, which causes the Alzheimer's. Let's speak to GB News' health and science editor, Lucy Johnston, for more. Lucy, what can you tell us about this? It's fascinating news.
It's absolutely fascinating and really exciting. So what the scientists have done is to reverse Alzheimer's in mice that were genetically pre-programmed to develop it. Now, Alzheimer's disease is the most common form of dementia in the UK. It affects nearly 1 million people, and it's notoriously hard to treat, and there is no cure. But this is one study that's really highlighting the fact that we're on the brink of a revolution in medicine for this disease. We've got about 100 clinical trials ongoing, and this trial is looking at actually repairing the blood-brain barrier, which is the protective covering of the blood vessels. That barrier removes waste from the brain and allows nutrients in. And in Alzheimer's, this blood-brain barrier degrades and it becomes malfunctioning. And what the research has shown is that by injecting these tiny nanoparticles that are made of sort of plastics, they can help repair this blood-brain barrier. And crucially, these tiny particles can latch onto a protein, the body's own protein that removes this waste. It's called amyloid, and the waste is linked to Alzheimer's, and it prompts the body to remove this amyloid waste.
Well, Lucy, it's great to see that potentially it could be done, and potentially done in humans. That was in mice. Lucy Johnson, thank you very much. Well, thanks for watching. Good afternoon, Britain. Do not go anywhere. Martin Daubney is up next. Martin, what's coming up on your show today?
Fantastic show, Nana, as ever. As 20 councillors defect to Reform UK from the Tories, I'll be joined in the studio by two of them to ask why did you jump ship. At 5 o'clock, we'll sit down exclusively with Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition, to ask her, is the party over? Plus, today I'll be joined in the studio by a woman whose house was bombed on the 7th of October in Israel, and a woman who filmed a London woman cutting down ribbons of peace. All coming 3 till 6.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Through this evening and overnight, we'll see a bit of a north-south split in our weather, often mild and cloudy towards the south, but to the north of this, clearer air means it's going to be turning chilly as we head through the course of the evening. There'll be some cloud and some spells of rain at times, particularly where we see this frontal system sinking its way southwards. So initially across northern parts of England, northern parts of Wales, and eventually sinking into central and southern parts through the course of the night. So often cloudy here with some spells of drizzle. To the north of this, though, largely dry and plenty of clear skies, so it's likely we'll see some mist and fog by the morning. This mainly across northern England, possibly Northern Ireland, but across Scotland, more cloud once again, plenty of showers moving through here. So a slightly chillier start across northern areas, but to the south, milder, cloudier with some drizzle. It's also going to be a fairly damp start once again across Scotland. Plenty of showers moving through here. These could merge together to bring some more persistent outbreaks of rain at times, but mostly dry across the far east of Scotland. Should be mostly dry too across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, a chance of some low cloud around at times, particularly as we head towards dawn. And across parts of the south, once again, fairly cloudy. It's probably going to be quite a gloomy start with some drizzle in places. Now, this system once again will slowly shift its way southwards, so it will brighten up across many areas. Wales, central parts of England should see some sunny spells, even across Northern Ireland. Most of this cloud is likely to linger across the south and also fairly cloudy across Scotland. Those showers continuing, and it's also going to be fairly breezy, particularly as we head towards the afternoon. Where we see any sunshine, once again, it should feel warm and pleasant, highs reaching around 17 to 18 degrees Celsius. Through into the evening, we'll see a split in conditions once again. The southern half of the country seeing those clearer skies, so a chance we could see some frost, possibly some mist and fog during the overnight period, and spells of rain continuing across Scotland. For the rest of the week and into the weekend, high pressure dominates, so mostly dry, but often quite cloudy.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
You could bank an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. And if that wasn't enough, you'll also get to drive away in this brand new motorhome. This brand new 2025 Benamar Primero could be yours. It comes with all the mod cons you'd expect from a vehicle worth over £74,000 and comfortably sleeps 4 people. This prize package is worth over £104,000. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
GB News. News Breakfast every day from 6 a.m.
Park Estate, and the anti-litter champion. Great to see you. What made you think of this, Duncan?
I think just the huge amount of litter. I said to the children, when I was their age, we would be able to go from this beautiful estate, which I'm so lucky to live in, to Whittam or Chelmsford or Braintree, and you'll never see any litter. And today it's so different. And, you know, we're thinking we've got to affect some kind of behavioural change. And the best place to start with that is with young minds. It's so baffling to me that people don't prioritise litter, because if you think about it, all the ills of society that our civic leaders are trying to sort out are characterised by, you know, antisocial behaviour, lack of personal responsibility, selfishness, lack of community spirit. And if you toss a plastic bottle or a disused coffee cup or a wrapper out of your window, one is displaying exactly the same characteristics as, you know, we need to resolve all the other bigger antisocial problems.
What reaction are you getting from today's children? Are they a bit astonished about the fact that they shouldn't throw litter around?
Yeah, no, every time you ask the question, has anybody seen anyone littering? Up went 500 hands. Have you ever littered? And up went to sort of 10 very brave little hands.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I think for far too long in this country, millions of people felt as though they weren't represented at all by the establishment media.
GB News was needed because there literally was no other voice. Everyone was saying the same thing.
GB News exists because there is a desperate need for fearless journalism that puts the people first.
GB News came on the scene as a disruptor, and it has always been a disruptor ever since.
The mainstream is all about keeping the status quo as it is, ticking along quite nicely. They don't want to ask difficult questions.
But journalism is journalism at the end of the day, and we're not here to serve any masters. Our masters are our audience.
Charlie Peters, he gave a voice to the victims of grooming gangs, and now, of course, it's led to a national inquiry.
GB News exists to make sure those concerns are put forward and people feel as though what they want to ask is put to those in power.
We don't take orders from anyone. We ask the questions our viewers and listeners want answering.
I know what's actually being discussed by my family and my friends. Us ordinary, hard-working British people have had enough. We've had enough.
They're fed up with the same old establishment nonsense. Everything that we do is opening up conversations that others are afraid to go at.
Why are you illegally bringing people into Britain?
That is our job. Our job is to get to the truth.
If it's important to you watching or listening at home, then it's important to us as well.
That's what makes us the fearless champion of Britain.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting live across the UK. All the very latest news, debate and analysis all the way through until 6 p.m. And here's what's coming up on today's action-packed show. Early today at the Conservative Party conference, Robert Jenrick blasted Keir Starmer as a sorry excuse for a leader. Is there still life in the old party yet? We'll be live from Manchester for all of the latest. And Kemi Badenoch has put on a brave face at the Tory party conference, with rumours of a leadership challenge incoming and the party hemorrhaging voters and councillors to reform. Can she fight back? Or later on today, she'll be grilled by GB News' Chris Hope. And after 20 Tory councillors dramatically defected to reform this morning, Nigel Farage has blasted the Conservative Party is finished. On today's show, I'll be joined by two of those defectors to ask them, why did you decide to jump ship? And today, of course, marks the second anniversary of the Hamas terrorist invasion of Israel. On today's show, I'll be joined by a Jewish journalist whose street was bombed that day as she heads to a London remembrance event later today entitled October the 7th, A Time to Speak.
Cameron, my good sir. Palestine, Israel,
I'm not committing a crime.
Yes, you are.
You're...
Meanwhile, as you can see on your screens there, disgusting footage of a London woman cutting down yellow ribbons to commemorate Israeli hostages has gone viral around the world. On today's show, I'll be joined by the Jewish woman who filmed that footage, who asks, what kind of person would even do that? And the United Nations claims that over 500,000 Gazans are trapped in famine. But is that true? On today's show, I'll be joined by Reform UK's Deputy Leader Richard Tice, who just returned from the Israeli-Gaza frontline. He'll share exclusive footage of huge convoys of food going into Gaza and ask, is the UN telling the truth? And GBNews has exclusive access to the frontline officers leading the fight back against London's phone theft epidemic. That's all coming up in your next hour. Well, the show is a pleasure to have your company. 20 councillors in one morning, one every 15 minutes, defected from the Conservatives to Reform UK this morning. Why did they do it? Well, I'll be joined in the studio in a short while's time by two of those defectors to ask them that precise question. And if Nigel Farage is saying the Tory party is dead, why are so many Conservatives going to Reform UK? That's all coming up in your next hour. Stay tuned. Get in touch usual ways. gbnews.com/your say is the way to do so. But now it's your headlines, and here's Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. The top stories. It's 2 years to the day since Hamas militants stormed into southern Israel, killing 1,200 people and taking 200